Chapter 4607. The demons of the Eternal World were definitely one of the top forces in the Eternal World, and the Eternal Demon Sect was one of the top demonic Tao forces. The Eternal Demon Sect was a demonic Tao sect presided over by a supreme existence in the Eternal Realm. Zhong Yu was an elder of the Eternal Demon Sect, and her cultivation base had already reached the half-step Eternal Realm. It was only a matter of time before she became a true Eternal Supreme Demon Lord. However, she was unlucky enough to enter the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world, and then unlucky enough to unlock the seal on her body, releasing the power of a half-step Eternal Realm expert. As a result, the super killing array that Ji Yu Fei had set up before was triggered. Of course, the super killing array that Ji Yu Fei had set up could only be activated by the true power of the extreme Tao level or above. The true power of the extreme Tao level referred to the true meaning of the Great Tao and the Great Tao laws, not just pure power. Zhong Yu thought that with her half-step eternal cultivation base, there was no power in this world that could compete with her. That was why she had unlocked the seal. However, at this time, she regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. How is this possible? Zhong Yu couldn't believe that there was a power in this inferior world that could hurt her. She saw one terrifying sword light after another falling from the sky, directly piercing through Zhong Yu's eternal demon body. Although it didn't really hurt her essence, it weakened her power. Moreover, she could clearly feel that the power of the super killing array was still constantly increasing, as if there was no end to it. Preposterous. Zhong Yu was shocked and angry. She transformed into the eternal demon body, drew the power of the strongest demonic Tao, and raised her power to the peak of the half-step Eternal Realm. Swish! Another beam of sword light descended from the sky, directly piercing through the eternal demon body that Zhong Yu had transformed into, leaving behind a huge hole that went through the front and back of the demon body. This time, Zhong Yu suffered a great impact. She coughed up a mouthful of blood, and her expression became weary. Annihilation. Inside the super killing array, one of Ji Yu Fei's doppelgangers directly used the trump card of the super killing array. A mass of annihilation divine light burst out, instantly enveloping the gigantic demonic shadow trapped in the array. Rumble, the eternal devil body shook violently, and one after another, the devil marks dissipated in the void. They were destroyed by the annihilating power of the super killing formation, and the entire eternal devil body became faint and illusory. This won't do. If this continues, I will definitely be finished. Zhong Yu had to admit that the cultivation of the person who laid down this super killing array was definitely above his own. Zhong Yu was extremely anxious. What should we do? 3 devil shadows appeared hundreds of thousands of miles away. Seeing this scene, the 3 devils were all stunned. There was actually someone who could trap Elder Zhong Yu. Moreover, Elder Zhong Yu's eternal devil body had dimmed. This was definitely not a good thing. Call for help. The leader of the demons took out a devil talisman from his body. Without any hesitation, the demon immediately crushed the demonic talisman in his hand. In the next moment, a beam of demonic light instantly broke through the void and disappeared into the endless starry sky. That is, in the distance, seeing demon shine shoot into the skies, the powerhouses of the other worlds all looked towards the direction he vanished in. Boom! At this time, inside the super killing array, the huge devil shadow finally exploded. Endless devil chi was trapped by the super killing array, and countless devil marks dissipated. Die! A majestic voice came from the sky. Then, endless devil chi was directly smashed into the primal chaos, and an immortal sword light suddenly cut down the devil shadow in the middle of the devil chi. I can't accept this. A wave of spiritual sense quickly dissipated, and in the end, nothing was left. A peerless great devil of half-step eternal rank was actually refined to death by a super-killing array. This scene scared the 3 great devils in the distance out of their wits. Run! The 3 devils glanced at each other, and then directly fled in different directions. However, 3 sword lights descended from the sky and killed the 3 demons that were trying to escape in different directions. After killing the 3 devils, the power of the super killing array gradually disappeared, and a figure appeared in the void. It was a black-robed young man with the same appearance as Ji Yu Fei. This black-robed young man was one of the 2 doppelgangers of Ji Yu Fei. Just as Ji Yufei's doppelganger controlled the super-killing array and killed Zhongyu, as well as Zhongyu's 3 subordinates, in the eastern region of the Chaos Immortal Mansion world, the battle between Ji Yuling and Yu Huang was still going on. They fought their way into the depths of the starry sky. Ji Yuling's right hand made a grabbing motion, and more than a dozen stars immediately shrank and were caught in her hand. The next moment, she directly threw more than a dozen star marks at Yu Huang. Yu Huang laughed heartily. Bright flames burst out from her eyes, and the flames directly burned the incoming stars into ashes. True Phoenix Sword. Yu Huang pulled at the void with both hands, and a peerless divine sword immediately appeared in the void in front of her. She grabbed the divine sword with one hand. Buzz. The sound of the sword resonated through the sky, and the sword chi soared into the sky. The moment Yu Huang held the divine sword, her aura changed greatly, as if she had turned into a terrifying supreme sword ancestor. When the sword chi that rushed out of the divine sword swept a star, it actually directly cut the star in half. An eternal sword tool? Ji Yuling was shocked, but she immediately shook her head. Because under the shroud of her father's super-killing array, who would dare to use the power of the extreme path? Not to mention the power of the eternal path. The devil from before was the best proof. Although they were in the eastern region, they still sensed the scene in the western region. The divine consciousness of a quasi-supreme was enough to sense the sudden appearance of the supreme aura. However, the supreme aura disappeared not long after it appeared. Needless to say, someone had unlocked the seal, and then that person died. Kill. At that moment, Yu Huang charged over with her sword, and the sword chi directly pierced through the sky, splitting the void as if it could cut through everything. Me. Ji Yuling flipped her right hand, and a divine mace appeared in her hand. Clang. She waved the divine mace and directly blocked the sword light that was coming at her. That was the human emperor divine mace that Ji Yufei had given to Ji Yuling to protect herself. Ji Yuling also did not dare to use the power of the extreme path, nor did she dare to activate the true power of the human emperor divine mace. The divine mace and the divine sword kept colliding, and bright sparks bloomed. The two great experts had fought until now, and they had already used Dao weapons, making the battle even more intense. The people watching the battle nearby were all extremely nervous. Yu Huang's combat power seems to have increased again. Beigong Yu sighed. The eternal world had never lacked geniuses and monsters. He himself was already a monster, but he did not expect Yu Huang to be no weaker than him. Chapter 4608. In the eastern region of the world of immortal chaos, Gulling was battling Holy Daughter Yu Huang of the Eternal Immortal Sect. Both of them were using Dao treasures. Gulling held the Mortal Emperor Swordbreaker, which her father, Ji Yufei, had given her for self-defense, while Yu Huang wielded a sword. It was a precious treasure of the Eternal Immortal Sect, the True Phoenix Sword. The True Phoenix Sword had been forged by one of the patriarchs of the Eternal Immortal Trails, who had slain a true phoenix with divine abilities, and then used the true phoenix bone to forge it. That true phoenix was an extreme Dao existence, and the true phoenix sword refined from its true bones was extraordinary. Even if it wasn't a true eternal Dao treasure, it was at least a quasi-eternal Dao treasure. However, Yu Huang didn't dare to use the true power of the true phoenix sword, which made her feel extremely sullen. However, even if he did not dare to use the true power of the true phoenix sword, a quasi-eternal Dao artifact was still a quasi-eternal Dao artifact. After exchanging hundreds of blows, the human emperor divine mace in Ji Yuling's hand was covered with sword marks. This. Gulling was shocked to see the mark on the mortal emperor divine swordbreaker. It was a weapon that could fight against her extreme Dao item, but it still had a mark on it. Could it be that her opponent's sword was really an eternal Dao treasure? True Phoenix spreads its wings. Yu Huang roared angrily. She had finally used her trump card. The shadow of a divine phoenix emerged from her body. It flapped its wings and flew high into the air. Countless rays of light shot out from its wings. Each beam of sword light cut through the void. Scorching sword chi filled every inch of the void, and the temperature of the world rose rapidly. This was a fire-type sword Dao, and the sword light was filled with the power of fire. Bring it on. Gulling shouted. In the next moment, she transformed into an immortal beam of sword light that shot up into the sky to meet Yu Huang's sword light. It was also a fire-type sword Dao, and it was also extremely fierce. However, there was one difference. Gulink's sword had a stronger killing aura. Her sword Dao had been inherited from Ji Yu Fei, while Ji Yu Fei's sword Dao had been born from the 9 heaven punishing swords. The 9 heaven punishing swords was a supreme sword Dao created by the sword servant who had entered the Dao through killing. This sword Dao had a strong killing nature and was number 1 in the world. Therefore, Ji Yu Ling's sword was also filled with killing intent. As soon as the killing sword appeared, heaven and earth changed color. Rumble, the 2 supreme powers of the way of the sword clashed together in an instant, erupting with extremely powerful waves. Beams of sword light rushed out, and wherever they passed, huge stars would be cut in half. In just a few breaths of time, Ji Yu Ling was sent flying with blood seeping out of the corner of his mouth. Yu Huang stood upright with her sword in hand. Her face was flushed red and a stream of blood had already rushed to her throat. However, she forcefully swallowed it back down. On the surface, it seemed that Yu Huang was slightly superior in the contest of sword principles, but in reality, it was really hard to say who would win and who would lose. Entering the sword Dao through killing, Yu Huang had no choice but to put away her contempt. This expert from the lower realm was the strongest opponent she had ever encountered. He was in no way inferior to the divine sons and saintesses of the top forces in Eternal World. Even Beigong Yu and the martial polarity were moved. Again, the more Ji Yu Ling fought, the more courageous she became. Only an opponent of this level was worthy of her fighting with all her strength. Warriors were born warriors, and they could stimulate their potential in battle. You think I'm afraid of you? Ji Yu Ling had also aroused Yu Huang's strongest fighting spirit, and she directly displayed the true Phoenix sword technique. Ji Yu Ling directly used the Emperor Divine Mace as a sword. The immortal sword light of the way of the killing sword constantly collided with the true Phoenix sword light from Yu Huang, and a brilliant sword light bloomed. The wisps and wisps of sword light cut through the void. The 2 great experts of the way of the sword fought together, and it was difficult to determine the winner in a short time. At this time, in the central region of the Immortal Mansion world, He Tian followed behind Ziyang Emperor and broke into the underground Great Tomb of the Extreme Path. Damn, this place is King evil. He Tian shuddered. He saw that the long tomb passage was dim, and there was a faint layer of fog lingering around it. There were broken stone people scattered around. It was obvious that Ziyang Emperor had directly forced his way in. However, He Tian was extremely careful. Even so, he was still attacked by stone people. These people were very strong, and they actually had the battle strength of a quasi-supreme. Even if He Tian wanted to kill a stone person, it would still take some effort. After killing a few stone people, they passed through the tomb passage, and suddenly the front opened up and lit up. There was actually a huge cave in front of them. There were flowers and trees inside, a small bridge over a flowing river, and spiritual qi lingering around it. It was actually an excellent place for cultivation. Moreover, there were rare spirit herbs growing here, such as true dragon grass, heavenly godfruit, purple gold king ginseng, and so on. Some old herbs had even become spirits. He Tian looked at these spirit herbs, and his saliva almost dripped to the ground. Well, where did Ziyang Emperor go? He Tian's gaze swept around, and there was not even a shadow of a person here. In the end, I still benefited from it. He Tian didn't hesitate any longer. He immediately collected all the elixirs in the heavenly abode. When he was about to transplant the purple gold ginseng king into his inner world, the ginseng king slipped away quickly. It transformed into a big fat boy. However, this big fat boy slipped away with his bare buttocks. Can you escape? He Tian used his supernatural power, and with a big hand, he directly grabbed the big fat boy that the purple gold king ginseng transformed into, and directly threw him into his inner world. However, at this moment, a fist instantly smashed in front of He Tian. He Tian sneered, and in the next moment, he instantly disappeared into the void. The person who sneaked up on him was a little surprised. A figure appeared in this side of the cave. It was a guy with the head of a wolf and the eyes of a mouse. He was short and thin, just like a mouse. Slap. In the next moment, there was a loud slap, and in the next moment, the guy with the head of a mouse was sent flying, and a dozen bloody teeth flew out of his mouth. Bam! The person hit the wall heavily, and then rolled to the ground. The left side of his face was swollen. If you don't have the ability, then why did you sneak up on me? Hei Tian's figure appeared in the void. I am the ancestor of sneak attacks, and you want to sneak up on me? This is simply asking for death. Senior, please spare me, please spare me. The person directly knelt in front of Hei Tian, and instantly became terrified. Who are you, and why did you sneak up on me? Hei Tian was not a good person. Senior, I am one of the 12 prime gods of the primordial realm, the Rat King. The person answered honestly and extremely respectfully. The Rat King of the primordial realm? Hei Tian stared at this guy who looked like a big mouse, a little suspicious. He was not very familiar with the primordial realm, and he did not care what the 12 prime gods were. Why did you sneak up on me? Chapter 4609. There were 12 overgods in the primal beginning world, but each of them was at the extreme Tao level. Why did one of the 12 overgods, the Mouse King, appear in the primal chaos immortal mansion world? Hei Tian was a little surprised. He actually had some understanding of the primal beginning world. It was a world on the same level as the ancestral realm. It was one of the primal worlds. The so-called primal world was the source of the world. One primal world could give birth to countless other worlds. This was the so-called myriad heavens. One primal world gave birth to countless worlds. These worlds were collectively known as the myriad heavens. The primordial world was filled with powerful races and countless experts. Even an extreme-grade sovereign could only be considered an overlord of a region. However, it was impossible for them to unify the primordial world. The 12 overgods of the primal beginning world were all extremely ruthless characters. The most cunning overgod was the Mouse King. Why did you sneak attack me? Do you think I'm easy to bully? Hei Tian looked at the Mouse King lying at his feet with a faint smile. This. The Mouse King rolled his eyes and smiled bitterly. I misjudged you. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Misjudged me? Do you think I'll believe that? Hei Tian laughed. I really misjudged you. You look too much like that dragon, the Mouse King said in fear and trepidation. What, dragon? Hei Tian was shocked. One of the 12 overgods, the dragon, also came to the primal chaos immortal mansion world. Yes, the others are here too. Those guys are so unreliable. They left me alone as soon as I arrived. They are such bullies. The Mouse King said indignantly. Hee, you're a mouse, not a human. Hei Tian corrected him. The Mouse King was speechless. Even if he wasn't a human, he was still the first mouse in the primal beginning world. Boom. Even as Erebus opened his mouth to say more, a rumbling sound echoed out from the depths of the great necropolis, causing cracks to spread out across the walls of the necropolis. Swoosh. Just as Hei Tian was slightly distracted, the coward kneeling in front of Hei Tian suddenly stood up, and countless cold lights shot out from his body. This is. Hei Tian was shocked and hurriedly retreated. At the same time, countless runes appeared around him and the space around him was distorted. All the cold light that shot towards him disappeared into the distorted space. What a cunning fellow. Hei Tian was shocked and furious. At this time, the Mouse King had already rushed into the tomb passage and disappeared in an instant. Hei Tian, just wait for my true body to descend. I'll teach you a lesson. The voice of the Rat Emperor could be heard. Hihi, is that so? I'll wait for you. Hei Tian did not care about this mouse at all. He knew from the start that there was a problem with this mouse. He was one of the 12 masters of the primordial world. Would he be stunned by his own slap? The Rat Emperor was extremely cunning. It was just an incarnation. Hei Tian pondered for a moment and then directly rushed into the depths of the tomb. While Hei Tian was exploring the extreme path Great Tomb, 2 dragons were fighting fiercely in the eastern region of the primordial chaos immortal mansion world. One of the dragons was a bit strange. It had a dragon's head and a turtle's back. It spat fire from its mouth and burned the void. As for the other dragon, it was the most primitive dragon. Its entire body gave off chaotic energy. This was a powerful creature that was nurtured by the world. It fought endlessly against the mutated dragon. The dragon of the 12 prime gods of the primordial world is only SOSO. The mutant dragon with a dragon's head and a turtle's back said disdainfully. This mutant dragon was the old turtle. The dragon had 9 sons, and each son was different. The old turtle's defense was absolutely amazing. Even the dragon of the 12 prime gods could not do anything to him. TCH, you mixed blood dragon. If my true body was here, you don't know how many times you would have died. The dragon of the 12 prime gods of the primordial world said disdainfully. The first dragon of the primordial world swung its tail and directly sent the old turtle flying. This made the old turtle so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. A single incarnation was already so strong. Could this guy's true body be even stronger than his father, the Grand Emperor? The Grand Emperor was the first dragon of the human realm. There was a difference between the primordial world and the human realm. However, the origin of a hero should not be questioned. Who said that the creatures of the lower realm were inferior to the creatures of the upper realm? Go to hell. The old turtle directly threw the turtle's shell. The turtle's shell instantly grew to the size of a giant mountain and directly knocked the primordial world dragon away. How dare this? The incarnation is too weak. The dragon of the primordial world was also extremely depressed. As the first dragon of the primordial world, he was incomparably arrogant and powerful. In the primordial world, a high and mighty dragon, a dragon of an area, was actually knocked away by a little guy. This was simply a great humiliation, a great humiliation. How dare you look down on me? When I go crazy, even I am afraid of myself. The old turtle grabbed the turtle's shell and desperately smashed it at the dragon of the primordial world. You bastard! The dragon of the primordial world was smashed away again and continuously coughed up blood. Although it was only an incarnation, it was also a living creature of flesh and blood. A mere incarnation wanted to proclaim itself as the ruler here? You are underestimating the creatures of the myriad worlds. The old turtle was very disdainful and continued to swing the turtle's shell at the dragon of the primordial world. This angry old turtle was indeed powerful. He directly hit the dragon of the primordial world. Dragon scales splashed and dragon blood sprinkled from the sky. He was not lightly injured. This is 2F** King Ruthless. Just you wait. The dragon of the primordial world directly fled. He had to escape. This guy was simply crazy. If he continued to fight, his incarnation would be finished. It was not easy to refine a powerful incarnation. Losing an incarnation would definitely make the dragon of the primordial world go crazy. F***ck, don't run if you have the guts. The old turtle roared. Once an incarnation of this level wanted to escape, even the old turtle could not stop it. The dragon of the primordial world was quite good at escaping. What are they doing in the primordial chaos immortal mansion world? The old turtle pondered. The 12 primary gods of the primordial world were all existences at the extreme grade or above. The dragon was the strongest of the 12 primary gods. Something that could attract the big shots of the primordial world to the primordial chaos immortal mansion world was definitely not simple. Could it be that they are all here for that thing? The old turtle suddenly thought of something and could not help but jump in fright. Perhaps only that thing could make the eyes of an extreme grade supremacy turn red. Interesting. Up in the 9 heavens, Tong Yu and Di Jotian, who were in charge of this part of the world, saw this scene and felt that something was wrong. It seemed that something big was about to happen. However, no one could guess what it was, not even Tong Yu. However, the primordial chaos immortal mansion world seemed to have become somewhat different. Chapter 46:10. Be it the primal beginning realm or the primogenitor realm, there were people who took advantage of loopholes and entered the primal chaos immortal mansion world with clones. Those who entered with clones were all existences at or above the extreme Tao level, because they didn't dare to enter the primal chaos immortal mansion world with their real bodies. What they were after were the few greatest fortunes in this world. One had to know that the immortal peach tree existed in the primal chaos immortal mansion world, something that even extreme Tao Supremes coveted. Moreover, a divine item like the primordial chaos source had appeared in the primal chaos immortal mansion world some time ago. In the depths of the primal chaos immortal mansion world, there was also a great tomb of the extreme Tao. That was where extreme Tao Supremes were buried after they died. Perhaps there was a great Tao source left behind. Some people even charged into the great tomb of the extreme Tao. However, it was a great tomb of the extreme Tao, after all. No one knew what was inside. Daoist Zhong, I heard that a divine treasure broke through the ground in the great tomb of the extreme Tao. Is that true? How can we believe it if we don't see it with our own eyes? Won't we know once we go in and take a look? On a small mountain near the great tomb of the extreme Tao stood a few experts. Their auras were extremely powerful, and they were all quasi-sovereigns. Quasi-sovereigns could do whatever they wanted in the mortal realm or the heavenly realm. However, quasi-sovereigns could be seen everywhere in the primal chaos immortal mansion world, because only those who had reached this level were qualified to fight for the fortunes here. Boom! At that moment, the entire ground shook violently. What's going on? The three quasi-sovereigns on the mountain jumped in fright. They weren't the only ones who were shocked. The other experts who had rushed over after hearing the news were also shocked. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the ground in front of them suddenly collapsed. In the next moment, countless battle cries rang out, and illusory figures rushed out of the ground, killing in all directions. What is this? An army of the dead? A middle-aged man with a vast corpse aura said in shock. He cultivated the corpse Tao, and his entire person was cold and gloomy. His face was as pale as paper, and he looked like a zombie. There were 3,000 great Taos, and every great Tao could lead to the extreme Tao. The corpse Tao was a bit different. It should be known that not many people were willing to deal with corpses, but those who cultivated the corpse Tao were different. They loved digging up graves, especially those of experts. To be more precise, those who cultivated the corpse Tao were all outstanding tomb robbers. They robbed the treasures in tombs as well as corpses. It's just a phantom formed from resentment and baleful aura. It doesn't pose much threat to us, but such a powerful resentment and baleful aura is rare. Someone said in shock. Boom. At that moment, a loud sound rang out and the land in a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers suddenly collapsed. A massive black hole appeared on the ground and an endless amount of fiendish aura burst out, smashing a huge hole in the sky. The endless clouds in the sky were dispersed. Those with weaker cultivations were directly invaded by the baleful yin qi. They howled miserably and turned into monsters. What? Everyone was shocked to the extreme when they saw this scene, and they hurriedly retreated far away as they didn't dare be touched by the baleful yin energy. Such pure baleful yin qi. Is this a peerless place to cultivate corpses? The expert who cultivated the corpse Tao exclaimed. Not only did the baleful yin qi not harm him, it could even increase his cultivation and battle power. The corpse cultivator opened his mouth and inhaled. The baleful yin qi in the surroundings immediately madly gathered towards him and was devoured into his body. A layer of black light appeared around Shu Kuei's body. Within the black light, there seemed to be countless ghostly figures faintly visible, struggling in pain. There's a universe underground. Someone exclaimed. Hehe, this is my opportunity. The corpse path expert Shu Kuei directly leaped up and plunged into the bottomless black hole ahead. When things reach an extreme, they move in the opposite direction. Extreme death can often give birth to endless vitality. That is a heaven-defying creation. Someone couldn't help but use a Tao tool to protect himself and jumped back into the black hole. However, some people overestimated themselves and thought that the Tao tool could block the baleful yin qi. Who would have thought that as soon as they jumped into the black hole, the Tao tool would quickly be corroded by the baleful yin qi? The person screamed in pain as he watched his body turn into ashes, his body and soul destroyed. Everyone was shocked to the extreme when they saw this. No one dared to enter the black hole carelessly. At this time, the Zi Yunxiao siblings also arrived. Zi Yunxiao directly threw a holy venerate level Tao artifact into the black hole. In the next moment, the Holy Venerate level Tao artifact instantly shattered in the void. In the end, even the fragments were corroded into dust by the baleful yin energy. What a powerful baleful yin qi! The Zi Yunxiao siblings were shocked. That was a Holy Master level Tao tool. Although it was only a low-grade Holy Master level Tao tool, the baleful yin qi was able to corrode it in an instant. They couldn't help but be shocked. He once again threw out a quasi-supreme low-grade Tao tool. The result was the same. The quasi-supreme low-grade Tao tool was also corroded by the baleful yin qi and turned into ashes. However, it still lasted a little longer than the Holy Master Tao tool. Ziyuna thought about it and then took out a purple divine rope. With a wave of her right hand, the purple divine rope immediately turned into a purple gold divine dragon and charged into the black hole. It withstood it. Ziyuna was overjoyed. The purple gold divine dragon that the divine rope turned into entered the black hole and was not corroded by the baleful yin qi. Looks like only a quasi-supreme top-grade Tao tool can barely withstand the baleful yin qi, Zi Yunxiao exclaimed. The expert who died in the black hole just now was a genuine quasi-supreme being, and he also had a quasi-supreme being Tao artifact on him. However, he was just an early-stage quasi-supreme being, and his quasi-supreme being Tao artifact was only a low-grade quasi-supreme being Tao artifact. Let's go down. The Zi Yunxiao siblings used their Tao tools to protect themselves and entered the black hole. I have a supreme Tao tool to protect myself. There's no need to be afraid of this baleful yin qi, a purple-haired youth said as he also entered the black hole. The supreme Tao tool did not explode with the true power of the supreme Tao tool. It could still be brought into the Chaos Immortal Mansion world. However, once the supreme Tao tool was fully activated, it would trigger the supreme killing formation that Ji Yufei had set up. With the previous example, no one dared to use the power of the supreme Tao in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world. At this time, in the Nine Heavens, where Ji Yufei was in seclusion, a mysterious aura spread out. This aura instantly enveloped the entire Chaos Immortal Mansion world. Master succeeded. Chapter 46:11. Within the world of the Chaos Immortal Mansion, a mysterious aura enveloped the entire world. What's going on? Did something ominous happen again? All the creatures who had entered the world of the Chaos Immortal Mansion to participate in the trial were alarmed. At their level of cultivation, they were very sensitive to the changes in the world. Father, Ji Yuling, who was fighting with Yu Huang, suddenly thought of something and wanted to retreat. However, Yu Huang's eyes were already red from the battle. How could she let Ji Yuling escape so easily? Kill. Yu Huang waved the true phoenix sword in her hand and beam after beam of sword light rushed out from her hand. They quickly intertwined in the void, forming a large net that enveloped Ji Yuling preposterous. Ji Yuling was furious. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Clang. The sound of a sword rang through the Nine Heavens and an extremely sharp beam of sword light rushed out from Ji Yuling's body. It shot up into the sky and broke through the sword net. However, Ji Yuling had been stopped for an afternoon. Yu Huang had already closed in on her. The chilling sword energy cut through the void and slashed right in front of her. Vroom. Ji Yuling grasped with her right hand and a divine sword immediately appeared in her hand. Then, she used it to meet Yu Huang's sword light. The two divine swords collided in an instant, creating devastating sparks. Both Ji Yuling and Yu Huang were sent flying backwards. Countless spatial cracks appeared in the void between the two of them. One after another, they were as dense as strands of hair. This was caused by the explosion of two beams of sword energy. Although the beams of sword light that erupted were very thin, several stars in the distance were struck by the sword energy and were directly cut into pieces. Yu Huang was shocked. In this low-level world, there was actually a divine sword that could fight against the true phoenix sword. The true phoenix sword was a very famous Tao artifact even in the eternal world. Ordinary extreme Tao artifacts could not even block one attack from the true phoenix sword. Humph. Ji Yuling turned around and became one with the sword. She instantly transformed into a beam of sword light and disappeared into the void. Preposterous. The next time we meet, I will definitely fight it out with you. Yu Huang said angrily. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ji Ling's voice came from afar. Only then did Yu Huang notice the changes in this part of the world. Could it be? Yu Huang thought of something and was extremely shocked. Impossible, in such a world, how could it be possible? Yu Huang shook her head fiercely. This idea was too absurd. However, the current situation seemed to be very similar to what was recorded in the ancient book. The Eternal Immortal sect was a super sect that had existed for countless years. As a holy daughter of the sect, Yu Huang had access to some of the sect's core ancient records. Furthermore, the Eternal Immortal sect was overseen by an eternal expert. It's impossible for anyone in this world to break through to that level. Yu Huang could not believe it. She raised her head to look at the sky and happened to see a scene that she would never forget. High up in the sky, the endless clouds dissipated, and bolts of lightning shot out from the depths of the sky. Each bolt of lightning was incomparably huge and exuded a terrifying aura of destruction. The entire world became strangely oppressive. Even the experts who had entered the Extreme Tao Great Tomb jumped out. Boom! The Extreme Tao Great Tomb shook violently. A ball of divine light, like a divine sun, rushed out of the bottomless black hole in the ground, illuminating the entire world. Powerful true yang energy burst out, shaking the heavens and earth. Emperor Zi Yang? Someone exclaimed. At this time, Emperor Zi Yang looked up at the sky. Not only him, but the other experts who had a bad premonition also looked up at the sky. The endless aura of the Great Tao was condensing, and a terrifying pressure suddenly fell on everyone's head, making it difficult for them to breathe. The Great Tao is becoming unstable, someone exclaimed. There were simply too many people who had entered the Immortal Mansion world. Not only were there quasi-supremes, but there were also many holy venerables. The good fortune in the Immortal Mansion world had attracted countless powerful beings. Even if not all the quasi-supremes from the 4 major worlds had come, it was likely that more than half of them had come. The heavenly realm, human realm, ancestral realm, and primordial realm. The number of quasi-supremes in these 4 major worlds was enormous. It had to be said, since ancient times, there had been countless beings who had been stuck at the quasi-supreme stage. Once they reached the quasi-supreme stage, it would be hard for them to even die. Naturally, there were also many quasi-supremes who had fallen in the endless passage of time. However, there were even more quasi-supremes who had survived. Moreover, it was not just the quasi-supremes from the 4 major worlds who had entered the Immortal Mansion world. Even a good number of quasi-supremes from Eternal World had entered the Immortal Mansion world. Eternal World was a paradise for the ultimate experts. Throughout the endless passage of time, Eternal World had given birth to countless quasi-supremes. Even the total number of quasi-supremes from the Immortal Continent and the neighboring continents was likely higher than the number of quasi-supremes from the 4 major worlds. Be it the Immortal Continent or the other continents, there were Eternal Supremes and countless Extreme Supremes. As for quasi-supremes, they were as numerous as the hairs on an ox. This was the reason why Eternal World could stand above the Ancestral Realm, Primordial Realm, and the Exalted Eternal World. The number of formidable creatures from Eternal World far surpassed the number of experts from all the other worlds combined. Due to that, no one knew just how many quasi-supremes had entered the Immortal Mansion world. At that very moment, however, all the living beings within the Immortal Mansion world sensed the chaos within the world. Even the heavenly Tao was trembling and countless grand Tao powers were being suppressed. Even Di Jiutian and Tong Yu could feel a great deal of pressure bearing down on them. It's Ji Yu Fei. He Tian, who was inside the Great Tomb, suddenly sensed something and he charged out from the Great Tomb. He is finally going to take that step again. The old tortoise stood atop a great mountain and raised his head to look up into the sky. Is Uncle Master going to achieve eternal? Qin Yarrow walked out from a valley. The scent of blood permeated the valley and there was a mountain-sized savage beast lying on the ground. There were also several other savage beasts that were just as strong. Yang was Qin Yarrow's master. Originally, she had wanted to address Ji Yu Fei as master as well. However, after considering it for some time, she decided to address Ji Yu Fei as Uncle Master instead. As the aura of eternity spread out from the 9 heavens, It gradually grew stronger and the grand Tao of the entire world was suppressed. Everyone there was shocked to the extreme. Master succeeded. Tong Yu was incomparably shocked. He had bitterly cultivated for his entire life. Wasn't it all for the sake of eternal indestructibility? Could a cultivator really break through to the eternal stage without relying on any external forces? By relying on himself. Chapter 46:12. Ever since he'd fought with the primogenitor first demon in the primogenitor's realm, the demon had used his life to open the cycle of reincarnation and forced him into the cycle of reincarnation. Ji Fei, whose cultivation had almost been stripped away by the power of reincarnation, had finally taken that step again. Rumble, in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world, the 3,000 Great Tao resonated. Endless Great Tao nomological laws intertwined around Ji Fei, evolving endless truths and blooming flowers of the Great Tao. This was the purest manifestation of the Great Tao nomological laws. The Great Tao transformed into golden lotuses, and Ji Fei sat cross-legged in the largest golden lotus. The 3,000 Great Tao couldn't compare to Ji Fei's eternal Great Tao at all. The golden lotuses that Ji Fei's eternal Great Tao manifested were much larger than the countless golden lotuses around him combined. This was the true magnificent feat of suppressing the 3,000 Great Tao with one person's Tao. Since ancient times, not many people in the entire universe had been able to do this. Master has proven his Tao. Up in the sky, Tong Yu stared blankly at Ji Fei, who was enveloped by countless golden lotuses of the Great Tao. At that moment, Ji Fei's body was undergoing a shocking transformation. Sometimes, he turned into a ball of lightning, and sometimes, he turned into a human-shaped flame. Sometimes, he was like the primogenitor dragon, roaming the world, and sometimes, he was like a divine phoenix, soaring 90,000 miles into the sky. His transforming into the Tao, Di Jotian stared at this scene, dumbfounded. The 3,000 Great Tao was just a general number. In this world, there were definitely more than 3,000 Great Tao. Ji Fei was actually evolving other Great Tao. Wind, fire, thunder, rain, snow, frost, primordial chaos, yin, yang, and the 5 elements. He could evolve all kinds of Great Tao to the extreme with a wave of his hand. This, Tong Yu was also extremely shocked. He had also taken the first step to the eternal realm and achieved a half-step eternal body. However, he was still worlds away from becoming a true eternal paragon. But now, he vaguely knew what he was still lacking. The legends are actually true. At that moment, a voice rang out. Someone had actually rushed up into the sky and arrived nearby. That person was none other than Beigong Yu, the monstrous genius from the Beigong family, one of the super forces in Eternal World. Beigong Yu had once broken the secret skill of martial extreme celestial sects Meng Ao and Leng Chuyue with a single sword strike. His sword Tao cultivation had already surpassed his cultivation realm. What legend! Tong Yu's figure blurred and directly appeared in front of Beigong Yu. Di Jotian also appeared beside Beigong Yu. Under the cover of Ji Fei's peerless grand array, they couldn't use the strength of the half-step eternal realm. Therefore, they could only suppress their cultivation base to the quasi-supremacy realm. However, this did not mean that they did not have an advantage. Whether it was Tong Yu or Di Jotian, both of them had genuine fleshly bodies at the half-step eternal realm. Just by relying on their powerful fleshly bodies, they were in an invincible position. Even Beigong Yu was no match for them. Of course, Tong Yu and the others couldn't kill a monster like Beigong Yu just by relying on the strength of their bodies. His not transforming into the Tao. His proving the Tao. Another voice rang out. Wu Jizi had arrived. Wu Jizi was another demon-level existence. He was the emperor of the martial extreme celestial sect's younger generation. Among the younger generation of the eternal world, he was rarely a match. Proving the Tao was to use the 3,000 Great Taos to verify one's own Tao, and then learn from one's strong points to make up for one's shortcomings. By doing so, one's Great Tao would be sublimated and transformed. Finally, one could break through one's shackles and complete one's Great Tao. Both Wu Jizi and Beigong Yu came from super forces that had existed for countless years. Whether it was the Beigong family or the martial extreme celestial sect, They both had eternal supremacy. Of course, it had been a long time since the eternal supremacy of their sects and families had appeared. Existences like that were rarely seen in the world. The only thing they couldn't let go of was their sects and families. At this time, the great path golden lotus that Jiyu Fei had conjured grew larger and larger. Every petal was branded with countless Tao patterns, and every Tao pattern was shining with the divine light of the great Tao. Many of the Tao patterns on Jiyu Fei's great path golden lotus had yet to be perfected. It was as though something was missing. And yet, the Tao patterns were transforming at a rate visible to the naked eye. An aura of eternity and indestructibility burst out from Jiyu Fei's body. It was a peerless aura that was truly above the 3,000 grand Taos. Although it was not particularly strong, it was enough to make it hard for them to breathe. This is an unimaginable opportunity. Ha ha ha. Looks like we will also have the chance to become the strongest existence in the future. Wu Jizzy stared at the countless great path golden lotuses around Jiyu Fei, an incomparably fervent look in his eyes. At that very moment, the entire space there shook and the faint sound of the great Tao swirled about. The 3,000 grand Taos began resonating with Jiyu Fei's eternal grand Tao. It was as though there were countless extreme Tao supremacies giving Tao lectures. It was as though there were countless extreme Tao supremacies worshipping a peerless existence. Anyone who was able to witness this scene would never be able to forget it. At that moment, tens of figures charged up into the sky to arrive nearby. Seeing that, they were all dumbfounded. Even Jiyu Ling and Yu Huang had come. Among the countless quasi-supremacies, only an extremely small number of them had been able to charge up into the 9 heavens and arrive at the place where Jiyu Fei had proven his Tao. They had been able to witness such a shocking scene. Is Uncle Master going to achieve eternity? Qin Yarrow had also come. Erebus had also arrived. He just so happened to obtain the primordial chaos source energy. After fusing with it, his cultivation base had risen to a new limit. He was just a hair's breadth away from achieving the ultimate leap. The old tortoise, on the other hand, was rather miserable. He had not obtained any heaven-defying opportunities, and he was also restricted by his father's extreme Tao bloodline. It was impossible for him to become an extreme Tao supremacy. He needed to sever his own extreme Tao bloodline to achieve the ultimate leap. How did they manage to go up? On top of a mountain, the old tortoise sat on a large rock, looking depressed. He was looking up at the sky. It was not just the old tortoise. There were simply too many quasi-supremacies who had entered the immortal mansion of chaos. Countless quasi-supremacies from the 4 major worlds and the eternal world had entered the immortal mansion of chaos to fight for all sorts of opportunities. Some had even set their sights on the immortal peach tree of immortality. But now, everyone was looking up, because an incomparably huge golden lotus had appeared high up in the sky. All the living beings in the immortal mansion of chaos could hear the divine sound of the great Tao spreading out from the golden lotus. All the quasi-supremacies sat down cross-legged. This was an unparalleled opportunity. The divine sound of the great Tao could help them comprehend the Tao. Today, I have achieved eternity. I will bestow upon all of you supreme opportunities. Chapter 46:13. Today, I shall attain eternity. Jiyu Fei's voice spread throughout the entire Chaos Immortal Mansion world. When the countless quasi-supremes from Eternal World heard those words, they became dumbfounded. The quasi-supremes from Eternal World were so terrified that they nearly pissed themselves. Eternal World. To think that someone from a minor lower world could actually attain the Eternal Tao. How was that possible? However, the boundless and supreme aura couldn't be concealed. It was an aura that was even stronger and more terrifying than that of an extreme supreme. Most quasi-supremes from the heaven realm, the human realm, the primordial realm, and the ancestral realm didn't even know about eternity. However, the aura that made their souls tremble could not be faked. Father has finally attained eternity again. Jiyu Ling was both surprised and delighted. She could feel that the bloodline in her body was resonating with her father's bloodline. Her bloodline had become even more powerful. It seemed almost impossible to sever such a supreme bloodline. However, right at this moment, A golden lotus flew towards Jiyu Ling and instantly entered her body. In the next moment, she felt as though she was ascending into the heavens. Jiyu Ling felt that the power of her bloodline was weakening. Jiyu Ling was extremely shocked. What exactly was that golden lotus? Go and fight, my daughter. Martial artists can only transform and ascend through battle. Jiyu Fei's voice sounded in Jiyu Ling's mind. Father, what is that? Jiyu Ling couldn't help but ask. The Great Path Golden Lotus can sever bloodlines and help one reach the Extreme Supreme. Jiyu Fei's voice sounded again. What? Jiyu Ling couldn't help but be surprised and delighted. It could sever bloodlines, but this alone was enough to make countless second-generation Supremes who were shackled by the Supreme bloodline go crazy. At this moment, one golden lotus after another floated down from the 9 heavens. Each golden lotus blossomed with dazzling divine light of the Great Path, and the sound of the Great Path resounded throughout the world. Snatch it. Beigong Yu directly made his move. This was the legendary Great Path Golden Lotus. One was enough for a quasi-supreme to break through to the extreme supreme level. Boom. Yu Huang and Wu Jizhi started fighting. They were sworn enemies, and neither wanted the other to obtain the legendary supreme creation. Neither wanted the other to become an extreme supreme. Qin Yaro and another expert started fighting. Preposterous. Qin Yaro was infuriated. This was the great Tao Golden Lotus that her martial uncle had bestowed upon her. Someone actually dared to stop her from obtaining it. At this time, the old turtle suddenly stood up on the mountain top, and then rushed towards the sky. At the same time, countless figures rushed up from the ground of the immortal mansion world. Roar! A giant tortoise soared into the sky, and black water gushed out in all directions. Many quasi-supremes in the vicinity were directly drowned by the black water. The quasi-supremes who were submerged were directly blasted into clouds of bloody mist by the tyrannical power of the black water, their bodies and souls extinguished. Uncle? Awesome. In the distance, old Tortoise was shocked to see this. He was the direct descendant of the Grand Emperor, and his uncle was actually a Xuanwu, a true primordial divine beast that was ridiculously powerful. At this time, the black water was vast and mighty, actually covering half of the sky. When the other quasi-supremes saw this, they were scared out of their wits and fled in panic. The black tortoise transformed into a black sea and raised huge waves. Roar! The black tortoise roared at the sky. The black tortoise, which was countless times larger than a mountain, opened its mouth and inhaled. A great Tao golden lotus was immediately swallowed into its body. Buzz! A powerful aura of the great Tao immediately erupted from the black tortoise's body. In the sky, the area covered by the endless black water gathered to form a black sea suddenly more than doubled. The black tortoise's cultivation was soaring. Seeing this, everyone's eyes turned red, and they desperately fought for the great Tao golden lotus that descended from the sky. This was a supreme opportunity. This time, it was not a wasted trip. At this time, the divine sons and saintesses from the eternal world went crazy. Battles of life and death broke out everywhere in the sky, and a terrifying rain of blood fell from the sky. The great Tao golden lotus was a supreme existence that achieved eternity. It was produced when the supreme existence interacted with the 3000 great Tao. Every great Tao golden lotus didn't exist forever. A great Tao golden lotus could only exist for 49 days. Once the time was up, if the cultivator who obtained the great Tao golden lotus was unable to refine it, the golden lotus would disappear and return to the world. Both Wu Extremity and Yu Huang knew very well that the great Tao golden lotus was something that could only be encountered by chance. Some people could cultivate their entire lives and never encounter one. Even in the eternal world, it had been a long time since anyone had achieved eternity. Wanting to produce an eternal paragon was simply too difficult. Yu Huang, what are you trying to do? Wu Extremity grew anxious. You don't want the great Tao golden lotus, so be it. But you want to stop me from getting it. This is too much. Buzz. Yu Huang did not say anything. She simply used the true phoenix sword in her hand to respond to Wu Extremity. Countless beams of sword light filled the sky as they slashed towards Wu Extremity. Outrageous. You think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my might? Wu Extremity's fist aura shook the sky. A domineering might burst out from his body, terrifying to the sky. Martial extreme divine fist. Wu Extremity did not hesitate at all. He simply threw a punch. In an instant, it was as though the sky was collapsing and the world was being destroyed. The countless beams of sword light that were slashing towards Yu Huang were all shattered in an instant. No one could describe this punch. Yu Huang was sent flying hundreds of thousands of miles away. The true phoenix sword in her hand trembled and blood seeped out from the hand that held the sword. It had to be said that the martial extreme divine fist of the martial extreme celestial sect was the #1 fist technique in battle. Wu Extremity was not like Meng Ao or Leng Qiuyue. Wu Extremity was the divine son that the martial extreme celestial sect had nurtured. Moreover, he was the #1 divine son. Damn it. Yu Huang had to admit that Wu Extremity was very strong. However, she was not to be trifled with. At that moment, Wu Extremity had no intention of tangling with Yu Huang. After knocking Yu Huang back with a punch, he immediately shot up into the sky. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a great Tao golden lotus. Let's go. Wu Extremity was not greedy. After grabbing a great Tao golden lotus, he immediately ran away. The great Tao golden lotus could only exist for 49 days. He wanted to refine the great Tao golden lotus within these 49 days and directly break through to the extreme Tao realm. Seeing that she could not stop Wu Extremity, Yu Huang also killed a fellow who was fighting with her for the Great Tao Golden Lotus. She took a Great Tao Golden Lotus and ran away as well. For something like the Great Tao Golden Lotus, one was enough. It should be known that such a heaven-defying creation could not exist forever. It would return to the world after 49 days. At that moment, Ji Yuling was fighting with the experts who were fighting for the Great Tao Golden Lotus. She wanted to refine the Great Tao Golden Lotus in her body during the battle. At that moment, everyone seemed to have gone crazy. They were fighting, killing, and risking their lives. Even people from the same sect were fighting for the Great Tao Golden Lotus. Chapter 46:14. Above the 9 heavens, countless great Taos resonated. One after another, golden lotuses of the Great Tao descended from the sky. This scene was imprinted in everyone's mind. They would never forget it. This day was known as the prologue of a great era. It was the beginning of an unprecedented golden age. From this day onwards, extreme Taos would be born in every world. Even the structure of eternal world, which had remained unchanged for billions of years, was beginning to change. No one was willing to be someone else's slave. No one was willing to be someone else's slave. No one was willing to be unable to control their own life and death. Everyone in the immortal mansion of chaos went crazy. Roar. A wild beast roared. An incomparably huge figure charged out from the depths of the starry sky. This giant beast killed more than a dozen quasi-supremes with a single slap. Then, it opened its mouth and swallowed a golden lotus of the Great Tao into its body. Its ape ancestor. Someone recognized this beast. Ape ancestor was an ancestor of the primordial world's ape ancestor. He had lived for countless years and had reached the peak of the quasi-supreme level. He was only one step away from becoming an extreme Tao's supreme. However, it was precisely this one step that made the ape ancestor despair. Over the years, his cultivation had been stuck at the pinnacle of the quasi-supreme realm, unable to advance even an inch. Now that the golden lotus of the Great Tao had appeared, he naturally could not miss it. Kill him and take the golden lotus. Immediately, 7 or 8 powerful figures charged toward the ape ancestor. Scram! The ape ancestor was enraged. He grabbed out with his hand and directly crushed a quasi-supreme. Then, he opened his mouth and sucked in all the essence of the quasi-supreme. Boom! The ape ancestor opened his mouth and spat out a bolt of lightning, which blasted the other quasi-supremes away. The weaker quasi-supremes were almost turned into charcoal by the power of the lightning. This ape ancestor was too ferocious. For a moment, no one dared to step forward. Taking advantage of the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity when no one dared to act rashly, ape ancestor immediately escaped. There were as many quasi-supremes in the immortal mansion of chaos as there were hairs on a cow. Once they swarmed him, even a peak quasi-supreme like Ape Ancestor would die. The powerful beings who obtained the golden lotus of the Great Path immediately fled. They wanted to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. They wanted to refine the golden lotus of the Great Path within 49 days and break through to the extreme Tao realm. As the news spread out, the entire eternal world burst into an uproar. The Grand Tao Golden Lotus had actually appeared in the lower worlds. Those who received the news immediately rushed towards the immortal continent. In an instant, all the teleportation arrays in the celestial continent were flashing non-stop. The emperor of the eternal divine dynasty of the celestial continent was extremely depressed. That was because the entrance to the chaotic immortal mansion world was in the hands of the eternal divine dynasty. Then, tragedy befell the eternal divine dynasty because they dared not offend anyone. The divine prince of the Wuji celestial sect had arrived and was going to the lower world. Who would dare to say no? Who would dare to stop the holy daughter of the eternal devil sect from descending to the lower worlds? When the Tao child of the Tao sect came, even the eternal emperor had to be courteous and did not dare to slight him. When the Arhat from Buddha heaven arrived, the senior officials of the eternal divine dynasty had to personally welcome him. In front of the top forces of the eternal world, the eternal divine dynasty was really nothing. The eternal divine dynasty did not dare to offend these forces at all. In the end, the eternal divine dynasty simply announced the coordinates of the chaotic immortal mansion world. This way, as long as there was a teleportation array between realms, they could activate it and head to the lower worlds. As a result, the chaotic immortal mansion world was immediately overcrowded. However, when the divine princes and holy daughters who entered the chaotic immortal mansion world saw the Grand Tao Golden Lotus descending from the sky, they were immediately thrown into a panic. Then, they fought desperately. For the various top forces of Eternal World, this was a great opportunity. At the same time, it was also a great calamity. Rumble, the whole world suddenly shook. A supreme aura suddenly appeared in the chaotic immortal mansion world. A large hole appeared high up in the sky. An extreme supreme wanted to cross over and enter the chaotic immortal mansion world. Everyone was shocked to the extreme. From the large hole in the sky, a huge figure was about to enter the chaotic immortal mansion world. Scram! At this moment, there was an angry shout. Then, a dazzling sword light flashed and slashed into the large hole in the sky. In the next moment, a despairing scream resounded from within the hole, and then the entire hole collapsed. At the same time, on the top of a mountain in the heaven continent of the eternal world, a teleportation array on the top of the mountain exploded. Then, the entire mountain was reduced to dust. Countless cultivators on the mountain were also destroyed in body and soul. They didn't even know how they died. Roar. At this moment, a roar came from a nearby mountain. A figure with an extreme supreme aura rushed over. A black-robed middle-aged man appeared in the sky above the dust. What's going on? Who destroyed the teleportation array? Who dares to oppose my extreme celestial palace? The middle-aged man roared. Earlier, one of Extreme Celestial Palace's core elders had died. That was her Extreme Tao Prime. For a mid-tier sect like Extreme Celestial Palace, the death of her Extreme Tao Prime was a serious blow to them. If Extreme Supreme Taos dare come, I'll kill one. If two come, I'll kill a pair. Up in the sky, Ji Yufei's voice spread throughout the entire chaotic immortal mansion world. Hearing that voice, countless quasi-supremes were shocked to the extreme. They found it hard to believe. Did this fellow known as Ji Yufei want to become the enemy of the entire eternal world? Boom! A loud sound came from high up in the sky. Another extreme-grade supreme being was trying to cross over to this world. However, at the critical moment, another sword light flashed out. And then, there was no more. The Extreme Supreme who wanted to enter the chaotic immortal mansion world to fight for the Grand Tao Golden Lotus was killed with one sword strike. The news quickly spread back to the eternal world. Then, the big shots guessed who had taken action. The Extreme Supreme of the eternal world could do so effortlessly. Eternal Supreme existences would not take action. Thus, it did not take long before the various sects forbade the Extreme Supreme from descending to the lower worlds. However, by then, a considerable number of Extreme Supreme had already been killed by that existence from the lower worlds. They had died to that person's sword. By then, many of the divine sons and saintesses of the top forces had returned. These divine sons and saintesses who had returned from the lower worlds had directly returned to their sects and secluded themselves. Needless to say, these fellows who had returned had obtained the legendary items. However, even more of the divine sons and saintesses could not return. The competition in the lower worlds was too intense. Even the divine sons of the top forces were in danger of dying. Inside the chaotic immortal mansion world, with Jiyu Fei standing guard, no one dared to act recklessly. No one dared to use extreme Dao powers. They could only fight with their own strength. Jiyu Ling, on the other hand, was definitely the craziest among the countless killing stars. She had actually obtained 3 grand Dao golden lotuses. Even after obtaining so many, she was still fighting with others. Chapter 46:15. Boom. Bang. High up in the sky, in the starry sky, 2 figures were moving at high speed. Occasionally, they would clash against each other. The resulting destructive power instantly spread for hundreds of thousands of miles, shattering one star after another in the void. "You're crazy." A blood-stained middle-aged man glared at a black-robed woman in front of him and gnashed his teeth. In his hand was a golden lotus of the Great Path. The black-robed woman's body was also bleeding, especially her left shoulder, which was a bloody mess. Although she was heavily injured, her will to fight was still strong. Kill. The black-robed woman did not care about anything and directly attacked again. The middle-aged man wanted to escape and did not want to be entangled with her. However, he had already been locked on by her. Escaping would not be easy. Buzz. The black-robed woman's right hand grasped the void and a divine sword immediately appeared in her hand. In the next moment, an extremely sharp sword light rushed out from her hand and slashed at the middle-aged man in front of her. The Great Path is boundless, beyond the heavens is carefree. The middle-aged man's body suddenly burst with immortal light. Stepping on the immortal light, he instantly disappeared into the distance. One sword to sever the Great Path. The black-robed woman roared angrily. The divine sword in her hand directly cut through the void and slashed the immortal light under the middle-aged man's feet. The middle-aged man was so angry that he almost vomited blood. "Let's fight to our heart's content." The black-robed woman did not care whether the man was angry or not. She only wanted to fight to her heart's content. "Who the hell are you?" The middle-aged man roared as he attacked. "Remember, my name is Jiyu Ling," the black-robed woman said calmly. Her swordsmanship was based on killing. However, at this moment, her swordsmanship was undergoing a metamorphosis and her murderous aura was gradually weakening. Although Jiyu Ling's murderous aura had weakened, its power did not weaken. Instead, it became even stronger. Every sword light that Jiyu Ling slashed out seemed to have come to life, interweaving into a huge net of sword light in the void, trapping the middle-aged man within. Unfettered heavenly Tao. The middle-aged man was not to be trifled with. Stepping on the immortal light, he actually rushed out from Jiyu Ling's net of sword light. Eternal law. Ancient Spirit's heart shook. This fellow's background was not to be underestimated. There was no need to ask. He was definitely the successor of a top force in Eternal World. The Eternal Technique was not something that just any disciple from a top force in Eternal World could cultivate. This fellow must surely be an heir disciple in his sect. "Go to hell." The middle-aged man roared and took a step forward. In an instant, he arrived above Jiyu Ling's head and stomped down. This stomp was like stepping on the great Tao of the heavens and earth, crushing towards Jiyu Ling. The terrifying destructive aura made Jiyu Ling feel a great threat. The middle-aged man wanted nothing more than to find a place to refine the great Tao Golden Lotus in seclusion. Naturally, he wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Jiyu Ling sneered. In the next moment, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. What? The middle-aged man was shocked. Even with his cultivation, he couldn't see how Jiyu Ling disappeared. This was definitely not a good thing for him. At this moment, he suddenly raised his head, only to see a large foot rapidly enlarging in front of his eyes. Bam! Before the middle-aged man could finish his thought, Jiyu Ling's foot landed heavily on his face. His entire face crumbled and he fell down from the starry sky. He has the great Tao Golden Lotus. The nearby experts rushed over, wanting to take advantage of the situation. Scram! With a roar, one divine light after another of the great Tao shot out from the middle-aged man's body, tearing apart the bodies of those who wanted to take advantage of the situation. Beams of divine light shot out from the middle-aged man's body. They were as sharp as peerless godly weapons. Even the void was sliced open, leaving hair-thin cracks in the void. You want to snatch what belongs to me, Sun Bai? You must be tired of living. The middle-aged man roared furiously. His face rapidly reformed and his flesh and bones were regenerating. What? His Sun Bai from the Heavenly Law's free and unfettered sect. The previous generation's divine child of the Heavenly Law's free and unfettered sect. The surrounding experts, who had been eager to take action, no longer dared to act recklessly. The Heavenly Law's free and unfettered sect was one of the top forces in Eternal World. However, Jiyu Ling didn't care who this fellow was. She wanted to fight. Only in a battle of life and death would she be able to refine the great Tao Golden Lotus within her body in a short period of time. Sky Trampling Step. Jiyu Ling immediately displayed the Sky Trampling Step. Sun Bai raised his head and looked at the rapidly enlarging foot in front of him. Bam! Jiyu Ling kicked Sun Bai down from the sky again. More than a dozen teeth flew out from his mouth. This stomp had crushed his lower jaw. Of course, given Sun Bai's cultivation base, his flesh and blood could be regenerated. Even if his immortal body was destroyed, he could still reconstruct it. However, he was the previous generation's divine child of the Heavenly Law's free and unfettered sect. His face had been trampled on again and again. He had lost all face. Roar! Tai Kong, I know you're here. What are you waiting for? Sun Bai's divine will spread out in all directions. Everyone in the vicinity noticed it. Tai Kong is here too. That's the current generation's #1 divine child of the Heavenly Law's free and unfettered sect. Damn, even those freaks are here. How can we have a share of the great Tao Golden Lotus? The spectators nearby were all very unhappy. The heirs and disciples of the super forces in the Eternal World were not to be trifled with. Among them, those who had been conferred the title of Divine Child were even more abnormally strong. Especially the so-called #1 Divine Child, who could crush other experts of the same level. I can take action. The karma between you and me will be written off. A voice came from the void. All right, Sun Bai said hurriedly. At that moment, Jiyu Ling took another step forward, wanting to catch up to Sun Bai. However, at that moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Your opponent is me. The person's tone was extremely cold. In the next moment, countless divine lights of the great Tao rushed out from his body and rushed towards Jiyu Ling. You are stronger than him. Good. Jiyu Ling punched out. All the divine lights of the great Tao that were rushing towards her were dispersed by her punch. Countless Tao patterns dissipated in the void. She wanted a strong opponent, regardless of whether it was Sun Bai or this guy called Tai Kong. Tai Kong had no choice but to get serious. Endless divine lights of the great Tao rushed out from his body again and circled around him. It was as if scrolls had been slashed open and cut open the void. Kill. Jiyu Ling directly punched out with the fire element fist. The powerful fist aura shook the heavens and the earth. It directly shattered the figures of the great Tao one after another and rushed towards Tai Kong. So strong. Chapter 46:16. In the Chaos Immortal Mansion, Jiyu Fei's attainment of the Tao had caused a great change in the world. A golden lotus of the Great Path had descended from the heavens. The golden lotus of the Great Path had never been recorded in the universe, so no one knew what it was. However, the heirs of the super forces in Eternal World knew that it was a heaven-defying opportunity. Soon, the secret of the golden lotus of the Great Path spread throughout the universe. All the quasi-supremes who entered the Chaos Immortal Mansion for the trial went crazy. They fought over the golden lotus of the Great Path with no regard for their lives. The golden lotus of the great path. Obtain it and you can attain the extreme Tao. Gu Fei's voice echoed throughout the Chaos Immortal Mansion. Gu Fei is up to something. The corners of the old tortoise's mouth twitched when he heard Gu Fei's words. Everyone was going to fight with their lives on the line, especially those who had been stuck at the quasi-supreme level for countless years. They were probably going crazy. An all-out war broke out in the Chaos Immortal Mansion. When the quasi-supremes of the four worlds received the news, they all rushed into the Chaos Immortal Mansion like madmen. A golden lotus floated down from the sky. The old tortoise was both surprised and overjoyed. He wanted to soar into the sky to collect the golden lotus of the great path, but before his feet could leave the ground, dozens of figures charged at him from the side. Blood splattered everywhere, weapons shattered, and broken limbs rained down from the sky. The scene was incredibly bloody. In the end, a powerful man displayed his invincible combat power, killing all his opponents and snatching the golden lotus of the great path. Even though this man was extremely powerful and could be considered invincible among his peers, he was still heavily injured. His body was pierced through, and a broken sword was stuck in his shoulder. One of his eyes was stabbed blind. Ha! The powerful man held the golden lotus of the great path with both hands and laughed heartily. However, before he could finish laughing, a giant hand slammed down from the sky and smashed him into a mist of blood. Both his body and soul were destroyed. A figure suddenly appeared in the void and snatched the golden lotus of the great path with one hand. In the next moment, dozens of powerful figures charged towards that person at the same time. That man fled without hesitation. The group of people chased after him and soon disappeared from the old tortoise's sight. Seeing this, old tortoise was dumbfounded. Half-supreme beings fell, blood scattering through heaven and earth. There really were too many half-supreme beings who died, as if even the heavens themselves were in grief, sending down a rain of blood. Staying alive is more important. Old Turtle went straight to Gu Fei. You bastards, go ahead and fight for it. Gu Fei is my brother. With this relationship, do you think I can't get a great path golden lotus? At this time, Jiu Ling and the number one god of the heavenly law walkabout sect, Tai Kong, started fighting. Tai Kong was indeed not someone that Sun Bai could compare to. The battle prowess of the first divine son of the heavenly law walkabout sect could absolutely crush Sun Bai. This was without a doubt. However, Jiu Ling's cultivation level and battle prowess had already caught up with those divine princes and saintesses who were at the same level as her, or even surpassed them. Rumble, Jiu Ling threw one punch after another. The violent fist energy shook the heavens and the earth. Towering divine flames filled every inch of the void. Countless scroll-like divine lights shattered under Jiu Ling's fists. Countless Tao patterns dissipated in the void. In the face of such great power, no matter how powerful one was, it was useless. Tai Kong kept retreating. Countless heavenly divine light rushed out of his body and turned into heavenly divine swords that slashed at Jiu Ling. He attracted the power of the heavenly law to his body. At this moment, he seemed to be the heavenly law, the ruler. The power of the heavenly divine light instantly multiplied. Swoosh! A heavenly divine sword directly slashed at Jiu Ling's shoulder, leaving a bloody mark on her shoulder. Blood oozed out. Jiu Ling was injured, but she didn't feel it at all. Her attacks were still fierce and powerful to the extreme. Bang! Clang! Jiu Ling's fists kept shattering heavenly divine swords one after another. She attacked Tai Kong. Swoosh! Tai Kong immediately retreated. He didn't dare to let Jiu Ling get close to him. He could see that Jiu Ling's Tao body was extremely powerful. It was simply a Tao artifact in human form. While Jiu Ling and Tai Kong were fighting, Sun Bai was unlucky. Jiu Ling didn't bother him, but the others swarmed him. He had the Great Path Golden Lotus. Dozens of quasi-supremes rushed forward and dozens of quasi-supreme level Tao artifacts directly attacked Sun Bai. The next moment, Sun Bai didn't even have time to scream. He was drowned by the destructive power of the dozens of quasi-supreme level Tao artifacts. Dozens of quasi-supreme level Tao artifacts attacked one guy at the same time. Even if this guy was a powerful existence at the same level as him, he would still die. Therefore, Sun Bai was doomed. His protective Tao artifact was destroyed. Then, his body turned into a mist of blood and his primordial spirit was instantly torn to pieces. I can't accept this. After Sun Bai's last thought disappeared, his body and soul were destroyed. So what if you were the previous generation's divine child of the Heavenly Law's Walkabout sect? So what if you were the successor of a top force in the eternal world? Who cared who you were? For the Great Path Golden Lotus, you would be killed without mercy. Everyone attacked crazily. Every quasi-supreme level Tao artifact radiated endless divine light and released the strongest power. The incomparably stable void was pierced, and the chaotic aura was blasted out. An expert wielding a spear directly nailed his opponent in the void. Then, he shook the spear in his hand and shattered the quasi-supreme level Tao artifact. However, the next moment, a blade light descended from the sky and directly split the expert wielding the spear in half. This expert of the Tao of the blade went on a killing spree. The blade light he unleashed traversed the heavens and the earth. It was as if even the world had been split in half by him. Several quasi-supreme level Tao artifacts were killed by him in succession. However, the next moment, the other quasi-supreme level Tao artifacts swarmed forward. Then, there was no then. The battle continued. Blood splattered everywhere. One after another, extremely powerful quasi-supreme level Tao artifacts fell. They risked their lives to fight so that they could reach the extreme Tao. However, there were too many people who wanted to reach the extreme Tao. Who would succeed in the end? No one could say with certainty that they would succeed. Even those who had obtained the Great Path Golden Lotus could not say with certainty that they could break through to the extreme Tao realm and become an extreme supreme level Tao artifact. It had to be said that the Great Path Golden Lotus had a time limit. After 49 days, if the person who obtained the Great Path Golden Lotus had yet to refine the Great Path Golden Lotus, the Great Path Golden Lotus would return to heaven and earth. In the end, Sun Bai's Great Path Golden Lotus was obtained by a fellow with overwhelming demonic energy. He was the successor of a demonic force in the eternal world, a pitilessly powerful figure. At that moment, Jiyu Ling did not want to play around anymore. He simply displayed an extremity breaker fist. Rumble, a supreme power erupted from within Jiyu Ling's body. It was a power that exceeded his limits. This power was guided out by the extremity breaker fist. Tai Kong instinctively sensed danger and quickly retreated. Chapter 46:17. The ultimate breaking fist was an invincible fist technique that Jiyu Fei had created after his cultivation had broken through to the eternal state. It was an eternal method. Jiyu Fei had passed on this eternal method to Jiyu Ling. Now, Jiyu Ling did not hesitate and directly displayed this eternal method. Rumble, Jiyu Ling punched out, causing the space before his fist to tremble. An unimaginably violent power erupted forth, destroying everything in its path. Roar. Tai Kong felt the threat of death and immediately retreated. At the same time, he desperately used the secret technique of the Heavenly Law Walkabout sect, trying to block this earth-shattering punch. Endless divine light of the Heavenly Law rushed out of Tai Kong's body. His entire body was instantly shrouded by endless divine light of the Heavenly Law, as if he had turned into a light cocoon. This was the strongest defensive ability of the Heavenly Law Footloose sect. However, Jiyu Ling's fist easily broke through Tai Kong's defensive ability and landed a punch on Tai Kong's body. Bam! Tai Kong did not even have time to scream. His body was smashed by Jiyu Ling's punch. A primordial spirit shrouded in a ball of divine light rushed into the sky. The number one divine prince of the Heavenly Law Walkabout sect was almost killed by Jiyu Ling's punch. This scene made everyone's hearts tremble. Too strong. Jiyu Ling's punch really scared a lot of people. Where are you going? Jiyu Ling stretched out his hand and directly grabbed Tai Kong's primordial spirit. Tai Kong is doomed. Someone exclaimed. At the moment when Jiyu Ling's hand was about to grab Tai Kong's primordial spirit, a figure suddenly rushed out of Tai Kong's primordial spirit and appeared in the void. Boom! An eternal aura immediately erupted from the figure, shaking the heavens. This is Gulling's shock was no small matter. In the next moment, she realized that she couldn't move. She couldn't even move a finger. Then, she found that not only herself, but countless experts watching the battle in the distance were also frozen in the void. The entire world seemed to be locked. A clone of an eternal paragon? High up in the sky, Ji Fei, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, suddenly opened his eyes. At that moment, the incarnation of the heavenly Tao Footloose sex ancestor snapped his fingers, and all the imprisoned living beings actually collapsed in the void, turning into a mist of blood. A clone, with a snap of a finger, had actually annihilated countless quasi-supremes. Tai Kong's spirit was dumbfounded when he saw this. However, Gulling didn't turn into a bloody mist. When the clone of the heavenly law sex ancestor snapped his fingers, an eternal aura surged from her body. Even so, Ji Ling could still feel the aura of death. His soul felt like it was about to collapse. This little girl has an eternal Tao artifact. The incarnation of the heavenly law carefree sect's old ancestor was a little surprised. Just as he was about to attack Ji Ling, a large hand suddenly descended from the sky and grabbed him. What? The incarnation of the heavenly law carefree sect's ancestor was shocked. In the next moment, before he could finish his thought, he was crushed by the large hand and dissipated in the void, completely disappearing. Then, Ji Ling felt her body lighten. The power that had imprisoned her disappeared without a trace. Whoosh! Tai Kong escaped. He didn't get the Great Path Golden Lotus, and instead, his body was destroyed. The number one divine child of the heavenly law carefree sect was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. However, the countless quasi-supremes who had been destroyed by the incarnation of the heavenly law carefree sect's ancestor felt even more wronged. At that moment, Ji Fei was sitting cross-legged in the sky, fully focused on refining the 10 extinction demon star that he hadn't refined back then. Powerful demonic chi constantly rushed out of the demon star and entered his body, quickly transforming into eternal power. He had just recovered to the eternal realm and needed endless worldly essence. In order not to destroy the balance of the immortal mansion world, he could only refine the 10 extinction demon star. Ji Fei's cultivation had reached a critical moment. As his eternal power continued to increase, his entire body emitted bursts of explosive sounds. His flesh, blood, tendons, and bones were transforming. His bones were constantly cracking and then quickly repairing themselves. His martial body was transforming into a complete eternal martial body. However, this process caused him to suffer a great deal of pain. His entire body was constantly being cleansed and tempered by the eternal force from the inside out. If he wanted to cultivate a peerless martial body, he had to be able to do what ordinary people couldn't and endure what others couldn't. Catcher. The sound of bones cracking came from within Ji Fei's body. His bones were reforming and repairing themselves. The repaired bones were sparkling and translucent like eternal divine jade. This was the eternal Tao body. It was known as eternal and indestructible. Even if the world was destroyed, the eternal Tao body would still exist. You haven't broken through to the mid-level eternal realm? Ji Fei was somewhat shocked. He had already refined more than half of the vast demonic energy contained within the 10 extinction demon star hovering in front of him. It would probably be a little difficult to break through to the mid-level eternal realm in one go. Rumble, as Ji Fei cultivated, his body gave off a terrifying aura that affected the surrounding heaven and earth. The heaven and earth essence energy around him was extremely chaotic. Up in the 9 heavens, dazzling lightning flashed from time to time. This was a kind of phenomenon, just like the Great Tao Golden Lotus. At this time, Ji Ling was challenging powerful opponents everywhere. She wanted to completely sublimate and transform in a life and death battle, becoming an extreme Tao paragon. The phenomenon in the 9 heavens lasted for 5 days before gradually disappearing. Master finally succeeded. Whether it was Di Jiutian or Tong Yu, they both saw hope in Ji Fei. One day, they could also become true eternal experts. The miserable old turtle wanted to see Ji Fei and ask for the Great Tao Golden Lotus from Ji Fei. However, Ji Fei was reconstructing his eternal Tao body. Thus, the old turtle was rejected. He wanted to continue waiting for Ji Fei to come out of seclusion, but Di Jotian secretly told him that Jiyu Ling had snatched many great Dao golden lotuses. There's hope. The old turtle thanked Di Jotian and directly rushed toward Jiyu Ling. Wherever there was a great battle, Jiyu Ling's figure would appear. At this time, the forces that were hostile to Jiyu Fei were restless. Jiyu Fei has become eternal. Those who received the news were all scared out of their wits. That was a legendary supreme existence. If he wanted to kill someone, who could escape? In the primogenitor's realm, the Eastern Domain, the deity race, the Li family, and the Chu family's descendants were even more grief-stricken when they heard this. Jiyu Fei was like a mountain pressing down on their heads. As long as Jiyu Fei was around, they would never be able to rise up. Chapter 46:18. Although Jiyu Fei's cultivation base had broken through to the eternal stage, his eternal heavenly tribulation had yet to descend. That was the result of him using a peerless magic to conceal the mysteries of heaven. Truth be told, he was doing this to give the living beings of the four worlds and even eternal world a chance to obtain the Grand Tao Golden Lotus. Since ancient times, no one had been willing to do this because it would come at a considerable price. The existence of the Grand Tao Golden Lotus was heaven-defying. The will of heaven and earth, and even the will of the myriad worlds, would not allow such a heaven-defying thing to exist. When Jiyu Fei had confirmed his Tao, his cultivation base had broken through to the eternal stage. At that time, heaven and earth had sensed it and sent down a heavenly tribulation. Furthermore, this was not just a heavenly tribulation from the Chaos Immortal Mansion. It was a heavenly tribulation from the myriad worlds. The endless will of heaven and earth had transformed into a heavenly tribulation to descend upon a single person. This was an unimaginably terrifying heavenly tribulation. This was many times stronger than the countless heavenly tribulations that Jiyu Fei had experienced in the past. Jiyu Fei could sense it. He did not know if it was because he had to recultivate, but he could sense that his heavenly tribulation this time would be very terrifying. He was not afraid of it. However, he also needed to be prepared for it. Once the heavenly tribulation descended, the Grand Tao Golden Lotus would immediately be destroyed. The Grand Tao Golden Lotus was formed from various great Taos. When the heavenly tribulation descended, the Grand Tao Golden Lotus would probably fuse with the heavenly tribulation to increase its power. Jiyu Fei took advantage of the time when his martial body was transforming into an eternal martial body to conceal the secrets of heaven, allowing all the living beings who entered the Chaos Immortal Abode to participate in this unprecedented trial to obtain a great opportunity to reach the extreme Tao. Those who obtained the Grand Tao Golden Lotus would naturally form a karmic connection with Jiyu Fei. Regardless of whether they were willing to accept it or not, the fact that they could reach the extreme Tao in the future was because of this karmic connection. If he encountered Jiyu Fei's disciples in the future, even if he did not take care of them, he would not attack them. Of course, with Jiyu Fei around, who would dare attack his disciples? At that very moment, Jiyu Fei could not leave. Without him there, this place would likely become a playground for the top forces of Eternal World. In Eternal World, the divine sons and holy daughters of the top forces with eternal autarchs would all have clones of eternal autarchs within their souls. An incarnation left behind by an eternal prime could kill a quasi-supremacy with a snap of a finger. A quasi-supremacy wouldn't be able to fight back at all. Meanwhile, Jiyu Ling was fighting in all directions. He'd slaughtered his way from the eastern territory of the chaotic immortal manor to the western territory, and then from the western territory to the southern territory. Everywhere he went, no one was a match for him. Be it the divine sons or divine daughters of Eternal World, or the quasi-supremes from the celestial plane, human plane, primordial world and primogenitor world, none of them were a match for her. Clang! Just as Jiyu Ling was about to charge into the central region of the primal chaos immortal mansion world, a streak of swordlight flew over and blocked her path. An extremely tyrannical aura gushed forth as a graceful figure appeared in the horizon. With a single step, she appeared in front of Gulling. "It's you." Jiyu Ling couldn't help but frown when she saw the newcomer. The newcomer smiled at Jiyu Ling and said, "The little girl from back then has actually grown to such a level. Jiyu Fei's family is truly heaven-defying. Eastern Sky Hegemon." Jiyu Ling stared at the newcomer, his battle blood boiling once more. This was definitely a good opponent. The Eastern Sky Hegemon, Dongfang Qing, was an ancestor-level existence in the eastern world of the human plane. According to legend, he was a descendant of the Eastern Emperor. He presided over the Dongfang family and rarely came out. However, this time, in the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world, Ji Yufei had achieved the Tao and the Great Tao Golden Lotus had descended from the heavens. Anyone who obtained it would be able to reach the extreme Tao. Even the Eastern Sky Hegemon couldn't help but come out of seclusion. Having reached the Eastern Sky Hegemon realm, he was well aware of the shackles his bloodline placed on him. He knew that only by severing the Eastern Emperor's bloodline could he reach the extreme Tao. Severing the Eastern Sky Hegemon's bloodline was something that not even an extreme supremacy could do. If he was not careful, he might suffer a backlash from the bloodline and lose his life. Refining a Great Tao Golden Lotus could sever the Eastern Emperor's bloodline. For the Eastern Sky Hegemon, this was a fatal attraction. You also want the Great Tao Golden Lotus? Ji Yuling stared at the Eastern Sky Hegemon in front of her. Little girl, you've already seized quite a few Great Tao Golden Lotuses. How about giving me one? How about I owe you a favor? The Eastern Sky Hegemon laughed. If you want the Great Tao Golden Lotus, fight with me. If you can defeat me, I'll give you two. Ji Yuling didn't want anything now. She only wanted to fight. She could feel that the Great Tao Golden Lotus in her body had already been refined a little, which gave her great benefits. Right now, Ji Yuling's martial body and spirit were both at their peak. The bloodline that belonged to Ji Yufei in her body was already very faint. The Great Tao fragments that belonged to Ji Yufei that were imprinted in the depths of her bloodline had also been refined a lot. After completely refining the Great Tao fragments that Ji Yufei had passed on to Ji Yuling would no longer be shackled. She would be able to make the final leap and become an extreme supremacy. Since the ancient times, countless cultivators from all over the universe had strived to become the most powerful existence, to look down on the universe and rule over everything. Ari, all right. Since you want to fight, I'll fulfill your wish. Don't say that I'm bullying the weak. Seeing Ji Yuling's strength, the Eastern Sky Hegemon was actually itching to fight. She had been in seclusion for so long, and her cultivation had also reached the peak of quasi-supremacy. If not for the shackles of the Eastern Sky Hegemon's bloodline, she would have long broken through to the extreme Tao. Ji Yuling didn't speak any more nonsense. She directly punched at the Eastern Sky Hegemon in front of her. Endless divine fire exploded in front of her fist, sweeping in all directions. This was Ji Yuling's fire element fist. At this moment, she was like a supreme fire god attacking. With a punch, it burned the sky and boiled the sea. Even the void was burned until it was distorted. Divine fire wasn't scary. What was scary was the great Tao of fire contained in the divine fire. Countless flame-shaped Tao patterns appeared in the Eastern Sky Hegemon's eyes. Every one of them was releasing a powerful great Tao of fire. If one was burned by this divine fire, even a quasi-supremacy would lose a layer of skin. This was a great Tao injury, and it wasn't that easy to heal. Buzz. The Eastern Sky Hegemon didn't dare to be negligent. She stretched out her right hand, and a divine sword immediately appeared in her hand. Swish. The Eastern Sky Hegemon's sword directly broke through the surging divine fire. Then, he attacked Ji Yuling. The extremely swift and fierce sword Qi actually cut through the void. Come at me, Ji Yuling shouted. She directly smashed the Eastern Sky Hegemon's sword light with a punch. In an instant, she appeared beside the Eastern Sky Hegemon and punched at his ribs. Swish. The Eastern Sky Hegemon suddenly disappeared into the void like a phantom. En. Chapter 46:19. In the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world, Ji Yuling was battling the Eastern Sky Tyrant King. This battle was extremely intense. Ji Yuling's Sword of the Killer was up against the Eastern Sky Tyrant King's Sword of the Emperor. No one knew whether the Sword of the Killer was stronger or the Sword of the Emperor was stronger. What the hell is going on? When the old tortoise arrived, he saw that the sky was filled with extremely sharp sword Qi, and two different forces of the way of the sword were mighty between heaven and earth. Hey, you two, stop fighting. The old turtle stomped his feet anxiously. Damn, I don't have much time. What are these two little girls doing? I said, did you hear me? Stop. The old turtle used the divine sound of the great Tao. Shut up. The Eastern Sky Tyrant King said angrily. Damn, these young people don't know how to respect the old and love the young. The world's morals are degenerating day by day, the old turtle said bitterly. Take advantage of your seniority. I'll give you a sword. The Eastern Sky Tyrant King willed a sharp sword light to slash at the old turtle. Wherever the sword light passed, it left a pitch-black spatial crack. Hey, little girl, are you serious? The old turtle hurriedly used the Tai Huang seal to shatter the sword light. I said you guys want to fight. Give me a great Tao golden lotus first. How about that? The old turtle said loudly. Great Tao golden lotus? Who has a great Tao golden lotus? The old turtle's voice traveled very far. The nearby quasi-supreme beings rushed over from all directions as if they had been injected with chicken blood. However, what awaited these quasi-supremes were streaks of sword lights that seemed capable of splitting the heavens and earth apart. Regardless of whether it was the sword of the killer or the sword of the emperor, they weren't something that ordinary quasi-supremes could withstand. Swish! A sword light flashed, and a quasi-supreme martial artist, who had rushed over excitedly, was suddenly cleaved into two. Damn, this is a trap. Who said there was a great Tao golden lotus here? The people were all stunned. Sword lights flashed one after another, and people were constantly killed. Even quasi-supreme Tao treasures couldn't block these sword lights. Just now, this guy said there was a great Tao golden lotus here. A little monk with white teeth and red lips pointed at the old turtle. Fuck, little baldy, are you trying to stir up trouble? When did I ever say that there was a great Tao golden lotus here? Old Tortoise felt wronged. He was truly fated with Buddhism, but unfortunately, it was an ill-fated fate. He definitely has the golden lotus of the great path. Everyone stared at Old Tortoise. I don't have a grand Tao golden lotus. Don't be fooled by this little baldy. Old Tortoise quickly clarified. However, how could those people believe it? They immediately swarmed forward. F***CK. Old Tortoise's hair stood on end. Without even thinking about it, he turned around and fled. That was a group of hundreds of quasi-supremes. Even the number one son of Heavenly Son of Eternal World would have to flee. Of course, some ruthless people might go on a killing spree. No matter how many people you send, I will kill, kill, kill. However, even if it was Jiu Ling who encountered such a situation, it would be impossible for him to escape unscathed. However, these people were a mob to begin with. Once they were afraid of being killed, they would naturally disperse. The old tortoise wasn't Jiu Ling. Although its shell was hard, it couldn't withstand the attacks of dozens or even hundreds of quasi-supremes. Prepare to be torn apart. Little Baldy, just you wait, Old Tortoise was furious. First, there was Fan Xiu. Now, there was his disciple. Could it be that both master and disciple were his nemesis? Even a Baldy was unlucky. This guy ran away. He definitely has the golden lotus of the great path. Little Baldy added fuel to the fire. Not bad, not bad. Everyone's eyes turned red as they chased after Old Tortoise with all their might. Preposterous. Old Tortoise simply wanted to tear that little Baldy to pieces. This little guy was too despicable. He couldn't care less about asking Jiu Ling for the golden lotus of the great path. Escaping was more important. His escape alarmed the entire immortal world of primal chaos. This scene was too spectacular. Countless rays of light were chasing after a single ray of light. A terrifying pressure spread in all directions. Everywhere it passed, everyone was dumbfounded. Who is that? He's so cool even when escaping. Someone said. It seems to be that ruffian demon lord from the heaven realm. Someone recognized Old Tortoise. What atrocious thing did that guy do? Why are there so many people after him? I heard that he has the golden lotus of the great path. Matt's golden lotus of the great path? Why didn't you say so earlier? Everyone could no longer remain calm. They directly joined the ranks of those chasing after Old Tortoise. The number of people chasing after Old Tortoise continued to grow. It was a spectacular scene. I already said that I don't have the golden lotus of the great path. Old Tortoise was chased all over the place. He lost his temper. Who is that? He's being chased so miserably. The Yunxiao siblings were also dumbfounded when they saw Old Tortoise and the army chasing after him. What exactly did this guy do to provoke the wrath of the heavens? Old Tortoise was chased from the eastern region to the western region, then from the western region to the southern region. In the end, he charged into the northern region, but he still couldn't shake off those people chasing after him. Qin Yarou, Ziyang Emperor, and the others had long since snatched the golden lotus of the great path. No one knew where they were hiding to refine it. At this time, the golden lotus of the great path that descended from the 9 heavens had been snatched clean. One had to know that countless quasi-supreme beings had died in the previous battle. No matter how many golden lotus of the great path there were, it couldn't withstand the competition of countless quasi-supreme beings. However, there were still countless people roaming around the danger zones of the immortal mansion. Some people had seen some golden lotus of the great path fall into the danger zones. For the sake of the golden lotus of the great path, even quasi-supreme beings would go crazy. Many people risked their lives to enter the danger zones. There were even people who managed to obtain the golden lotus of the great path from the danger zones. However, the person who obtained the golden lotus of the great path was besieged and killed as soon as he emerged from the danger zone. One golden lotus of the great path led to a massacre. After a great battle, countless quasi-supreme beings died. In the end, the first devil son of the eternal devil sect obtained the golden lotus of the great path. The first devil son of the eternal devil sect was also heavily injured and on the verge of death. He directly fled back to the eternal world. It was too tragic. The entire immortal mansion world was covered in a rain of blood. It was as terrifying as a bloody purgatory. The corpses of quasi-supreme beings and shattered Tao treasures could be seen everywhere. The person who obtained the golden lotus of the great path became the public enemy of the entire world's quasi-supreme beings. Everyone wanted to obtain the golden lotus of the great path. Whoever obtained the golden lotus of the great path would suffer misfortune. Old Tortoise wasn't the first person to be hunted down. This kind of pursuit happened everywhere in the immortal mansion world. However, Old Tortoise felt wronged because he didn't have the golden lotus of the great path. Let me tell you, I'm Jiyu Fei's brother. Jiyu Fei, do you know who I am? I'm the one who summoned the golden lotus of the great path. He's my brother. Old Tortoise had no choice but to bring up Jiyu Fei. What? Those who were chasing after Old Tortoise were all shocked. This ruffian was actually Jiyu Fei's brother. The quasi-supreme beings of the heaven realm and human realm didn't actually join in the pursuit of Old Tortoise because they all knew his identity. Chasing after Jiyu Fei's brother in the immortal mansion world was akin to courting death. However, not many people from the primordial realm, ancestral realm, and eternal world knew about the relationship between Jiyu Fei and Old Tortoise. Hence, they dared to chase after Old Tortoise. After Old Tortoise brought up Jiyu Fei, some quasi-supreme beings from the ancestral realm retreated, while the people from the primordial realm and eternal world continued to chase after Old Tortoise. Chapter 4620. Old Tortoise was chased by countless people until he lost his temper. However, when he had nowhere else to go, he gritted his teeth and rushed towards the 9th heaven. There was no other way. Brother, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Only you can save me. Old Tortoise had already been locked on by those who were chasing him. No matter where he ran, they would be able to find him. Boom. Old Tortoise broke through the first layer of the 9th heaven's seal and rushed towards where Tongyu and Di Jotian were. Ha ha, brothers, we meet again. Old Tortoise laughed. These two guys were real half-step eternal realm existences. In front of them, he was very humble. When it was time to be a coward, Old Tortoise would never act like a hero. Old scoundrel, do you think hiding in the 9th heaven is enough? Come out. Hand over the great path golden lotus, or I'll destroy your body and soul. You're the son of the Tai Huang Emperor, but you're a coward. You've lost all my face. Outside the seal, the quasi-supremes who were chasing after Old Tortoise kept ridiculing him. Hey, you bunch of trash talk. Come in if you can, Old Tortoise said proudly. In fact, if Old Tortoise could break through the first layer of the ninth heaven's seal, so could those who were chasing him. However, they did not dare to do so because there were two terrifying figures inside the first layer of the seal. The aura coming from these two people was too shocking. Even though they were separated by a layer of the seal, the souls of those who were chasing Old Tortoise shook. What's going on? Everyone who was chasing Old Tortoise was shocked and did not dare to act recklessly. This seems to be. There was an expert from Eternal World who had come for the Tao of Arrays. Even he was only able to figure out a few things. What is it, Master Mo Chen? Outside the first layer of the ninth heaven's seal, everyone looked anxiously at a white-haired old man. Master Mo Chen was an array master from the Eternal World. Array masters from the Eternal World could not be compared to array masters from other worlds. However, even he could see the depth of the seal. One could imagine how abnormal this seal was. Furthermore, this seal wasn't all that powerful. It was used to isolate one's aura. Furthermore, there was no need for one's cultivation to be suppressed within the seal. With that, anyone who entered would die. That's because Tong Yu and Di Jotian were both half-step eternal existences. If existences like them wanted to kill quasi-supremes, it would only take a snap of their fingers. I don't believe it. One of the quasi-supreme cultivators who came to form Eternal World directly broke through the first layer of the Nine Heavens seal and charged in. However, in the next moment, the unlucky fellow suddenly exploded and turned into a bloody mist that dissipated in the void. His body and soul were directly destroyed. A powerful quasi-supreme was finished just like that. Ayo, how miserable. Old Tortoise gloated. Everyone outside the first layer of the seal of the Nine Heavens was stunned. Who would dare to break into the seal of the Nine Heavens? I don't believe that this turtle can hide its head forever. Someone called out. That's right. We'll stand guard here. The people outside the seal were certain that Old Tortoise had the Great Path Golden Lotus on him. They didn't want to miss it no matter what. Hey, brothers, why don't you do me a favor and chase away those flies outside? Old Tortoise said cautiously. Just now, even he didn't see clearly how the unlucky guy who broke into the first layer of the seal of the Nine Heavens died. Di Jotian and Tong Yu exchanged glances. Di Jotian said indifferently, why should we help you? Well, your master and I. Old Tortoise glanced at Di Jotian, then his gaze fell on Tong Yu. Your master is my brother. TCH, you and my master are brothers, not us. Tong Yu said disdainfully. That's easy. Brothers, why don't we become sworn brothers? Old Tortoise's skin was thicker than the city walls. A puny quasi-supreme wanted to become sworn brothers with a half-step eternal existence. What a joke. Tong Yu and Di Jotian chose to ignore Old Tortoise. Gu Fei's seal could conceal heaven's secrets. Inside the seal, Tong Yu and Di Jotian's cultivation did not need to be sealed. In other words, inside the seal, Tong Yu and Di Jotian were invincible. This was Gu Fei's place of seclusion. Tong Yu and Di Jotian couldn't let those people outside enter. Old Tortoise's identity was a bit special. Tong Yu and Di Jotian didn't dare to do anything to him. However, Old Tortoise was still chattering. Tong Yu and Di Jotian directly entered the second layer of the seal and let him talk to the air outside. Brothers, you really have character. Hee hee. When Old Tortoise saw the two leave, he immediately became nervous again. Haha, you're dead. When the group outside the seal saw Tong Yu and Di Jotian suddenly disappear, they were immediately surprised and happy. Bam! Some impatient people directly rushed in from outside the seal. More than a dozen quasi-supreme barged into the first layer of the seal and pressed towards Old Tortoise. This. Brothers, you can't play like this. Old Tortoise's voice was trembling. Hee hee, no one can save you now. A black-robed middle-aged man sneered. Daring to barge in here is simply courting death. Do you think that Gu Fei will just watch as his brother is killed by you? Old Tortoise was still as stubborn as before. The dozen quasi-supreme barged into the first layer of the seal and couldn't help but be shocked. Although Old Tortoise was unreliable, there was nothing wrong with his words. Would Jiu Fei just watch as his brother was killed by someone else? Even a toddler would know that it was absolutely impossible. Impulsive. Among the dozen quasi-supreme barged out from the first layer of the seal. Although they wanted the Great Tao Golden Lotus, it didn't mean that they weren't afraid of death. However, there were still 11 quasi-supreme barbarians who didn't believe it. Without any suspense, a great battle erupted. This time, Old Tortoise was no longer a coward. He was incomparably heroic because he actually fought against 11 alone. Old Tortoise fought against 11 alone, which was one more than the strongest person in the universe. However, such a heroic act had a somewhat tragic ending. Old Tortoise was beaten up so badly by these people that his temper was gone. His entire body was covered in injuries, and some of his bones were even exposed. However, among the 11 quasi-supreme barbarians, 3 were killed by him, and the remaining ones were more or less injured. After all, Old Tortoise was the son of the Tai Huang Emperor. Once he went crazy, he would be very terrifying. Kill him. The remaining people attacked again. This time, Old Tortoise was directly sent flying. He kept coughing out blood, and who knew how many bones in his body were broken? Damn it, who did I offend? You bastards, I already said that I don't have the Great Tao Golden Lotus on me. Old Tortoise was furious. Chapter 46:21. Inside the first seal of the chaotic immortal mansion world, the Old Tortoise went berserk and started fighting against the 11 quasi-supremes who were chasing after him. After a great battle, 3 quasi-supremes died in his hands. The Old Tortoise himself was seriously injured, and so were the people who were chasing after him. However, these people did not stop, which made the Old Tortoise extremely angry. Why didn't these people believe me? If I had the Great Path Golden Lotus, I would have hidden away and refined it a long time ago. The Old Tortoise went berserk again. He took out the Great Sovereign Seal and smashed one of the Quasi-Supremes to death. The remaining 7 Quasi-Supremes were extremely ferocious. 7 Quasi-Supremes attacked the Old Tortoise at the same time with their Quasi-Supreme Tao treasures. An elder in green even took out an Extreme Path Supreme Decree. These people even used their Extreme Path power. Inside the seal, they could attack and use their Extreme Path power without worrying about triggering Jiu Fei's super killing formation. Boom. The Old Tortoise was sent flying and coughed up blood. The 2 of you are still watching the show. Are you not going to attack? Are you really going to let these guys beat me to death? The Old Tortoise roared, his voice spreading far and wide. The Old Tortoise had long cursed Tong Yu and Di Jotian's ancestors in his heart. The Quasi-Supremes who were attacking the Old Tortoise were shocked when they heard the Old Tortoise's roar. They did not forget that there were 2 ridiculously powerful guys inside the seal. Sigh. A sigh was heard in the void. Then, the 7 Quasi-Supremes who dared to barge into the seal to kill the Old Tortoise suddenly exploded without any warning and turned into 7 clouds of blood mist. Even the Tao artifacts on their bodies shattered. Even the supreme decree of the extreme Tao supremacy also dissipated into the void. It was as if an invisible hand had wiped out all the threats in the world. When the people outside the seal saw this scene, they were quite frightened. Thankfully, they had managed to hold it in. Otherwise, if they had rashly barged into the seal, they would all have died inside. Sigh, what a waste. Those were 7 Quasi-Supremes. They definitely had a lot of treasures on them. But now, all the treasures were gone. Just as Tong Yu and Di Jotian were making their moves, the battle between Jiu Ling and the Eastern Sky Tyrant King had also reached its climax. Buzz. 2 powerful forces of the Way of the Sword intertwined, and from time to time, extremely sharp sword light rushed out, cutting through the void. Boom. With a deafening sound, an endless amount of sword chi exploded out as one pitch-black spatial crack after another appeared in the void. 2 figures rushed up into the sky and stood in the void, facing off against each other. There's no point in fighting anymore. The Eastern Sky Tyrant King looked at Jiu Ling and said indifferently, "This little girl was simply too abnormal. She could actually fight to a draw with him." Again. Jiyu Ling did not care so much. She once again activated her mysterious art. This time, her entire body actually released an endless amount of sword light. Her entire body seemed to have transformed into a peerless heavenly sword. Swoosh! She became one with her sword, and actually chopped towards the Eastern Sky Tyrant Emperor. Preposterous! The Eastern Sky Tyrant Emperor could only retreat. He did not want to really fight to the death with Jiyu Ling. If he was not careful and injured Jiyu Ling, it would be terrible. In the Eastern Sky Tyrant King's opinion, fighting with Jiyu Ling was a business that would lose him money no matter what. Clang! The Eastern Sky Tyrant King used the Eastern Emperor sword in his hand to block the extremely sharp sword light that was chopping towards him. Using this force, he retreated at an extremely fast speed. You want to leave? Jiyu Ling's voice sounded in the void. At this moment, the Eastern Sky Tyrant King's figure instantly disappeared in the void. He had directly escaped. Little girl, let's play next time. The Eastern Sky Tyrant King's voice sounded in Jiyu Ling's heart. Jiyu Ling sneered. That terrifying sword light that crisscrossed the heavens and earth disappeared, and her figure once again appeared in the void. Yen, it's time to go into seclusion. Jiyu Ling felt that the shackles of her cultivation were beginning to loosen. After going through a series of battles, the great Tao Golden Lotus that had fused into her body was about to be refined by her. She had to find a place to go into seclusion and break through to the extreme grade. However, she had obtained more than one great Tao Golden Lotus. Wouldn't her seclusion be a waste of these great Tao Golden Lotuses? Uncle Old Tortoise. Jiyu Ling suddenly shot up into the sky and charged towards the 9th layer of heaven. Oh my god, that killer is here. When Jiyu Ling approached the 9th layer of heaven, the people guarding outside the 1st layer of the seal immediately fell into chaos. That was an absolute killer that was even more ferocious than Jiyu Fei back then. Countless quasi-supremes fled in all directions. Only the gods and saintesses from the eternal world remained calm. Who would have thought that Jiyu Ling was not here to find trouble with the quasi-supremes who were chasing after Old Tortoise? Jiyu Ling charged into the 1st layer of the seal. Greetings, little mistress. Tong Yu immediately appeared in front of Jiyu Ling's senior sister. Di Jotian also came out. He was Jiyu Fei's in-name disciple and had joined the sect relatively late. Even when he saw Jiyu Ling, he still had to call her senior sister. Is little mistress here to look for master? Tong Yu asked. Nope. Jiyu Ling's eyes swept around and immediately landed on Old Tortoise in the distance. Uncle Tortoise, what happened to you? Why are you in such a sorry state? Jiyu Ling appeared in front of Old Tortoise in a flash. Sigh. Old Tortoise was depressed and wanted to cry. My dear niece, you must remember the faces of those people outside. They were the ones who chased me to the heavens and into the depths of the earth. If you become an extreme supreme, you must take revenge for me, Old Tortoise said with snot and tears running down his face. When the people outside the seal heard Old Tortoise's words, their faces turned green. This was Jiyu Fei's daughter. If she really came to settle the score with them, they would be in big trouble. Tong Yu and Di Jotian exchanged glances. This old ruffian's ability to act pitiful was definitely top-notch. I got it. This is the great Tao Golden Lotus. Keep it well. Jiyu Ling extended her right hand and a golden lotus that emitted an endless aura of the great Tao appeared in her hand. Great Tao Golden Lotus. The eyes of those outside the seal turned red. Boom. Someone broke through the seal and charged in. He extended his hand and grabbed at the great Tao Golden Lotus in Jiyu Ling's hand. You're courting death. Jiyu Ling slashed with her sword and directly split the person in half. The murderous sword Qi even destroyed the person's primordial spirit. He was deader than dead. Tong Yu and Di Jotian wanted to help, but they did not expect Jiyu Ling to react so quickly. This Old Tortoise took the great Tao Golden Lotus, but his face was extremely bitter. My dear niece, you're causing trouble. You're going to get your Uncle Tortoise killed. Previously, Old Tortoise only roared and was misunderstood to have the great Tao Golden Lotus. Then, he was chased by countless people and had no choice but to hide in the 9th heaven. Chapter 46-22. Ji Ling sensed that her cultivation level was about to break through, so she went to the ninth heaven where Old Tortoise was and gave him a Great Path Golden Lotus. However, Old Tortoise, who received the Great Path Golden Lotus, frowned. His niece had given him the Great Path Golden Lotus in front of everyone outside. This was a solid piece of evidence. "Goodbye, Uncle Tortoise." Ji Ling didn't care anymore and left right away. Meanwhile, the hundreds of quasi-supremes outside the first seal of the ninth heaven were all envious when they saw the Great Path Golden Lotus in Old Tortoise's hands. That was a heaven-defying opportunity that could allow one to achieve the ultimate leap and become an extreme-grade supremacy. Since ancient times, countless quasi-supremes had never been able to take that step in their entire lives. However, things were different with the Great Path Golden Lotus. As long as one could refine the Great Path Golden Lotus, the quasi-supremes would have at least a 70 to 80% chance of successfully breaking through to the extreme grade and becoming an extreme grade supremacy. Moreover, the Great Path Golden Lotus could also allow second-generation extreme grade supremacies to sever their extreme grade bloodlines and undergo a brand new transformation. Second generations of the extreme path like Old Turtle inherited the bloodline of their extreme path fathers, which contained the extreme path great path fragments of their father's extreme path great path. Before breaking through to the extreme grade supremacy realm, the extreme grade great path fragments in their bodies would allow them to cultivate with twice the effort for half the result. This was their innate talent. However, once they reached the quasi-supremacy realm, the great path fragments from their fathers would become shackles that firmly suppressed their own great path. If they didn't refine the great path fragments from their fathers, they would never be able to become extreme grade supremacies. However, the Great Path Golden Lotus could refine all great path fragments and give Old Tortoise a new life so that he could have a chance to break through to the extreme grade realm. Everyone outside was like starving beasts staring at a fat piece of meat. They wanted nothing more than to devour Old Tortoise. However, with Tong Yu and Di Jotian inside the seal, no matter how much they wanted to obtain the Great Path Golden Lotus, they wouldn't dare to barge into the seal. After all, if those two wanted to kill them, it would be as simple as snapping their fingers. "Hehe, brothers, I'll wait here for my brother to come out of seclusion." Old Tortoise refused to leave. He didn't dare to leave at this time. Whatever. After saying that, Tong Yu disappeared. The seal of the 9 heavens wasn't just limited to the first layer. There were a total of 9 layers. He directly entered the second layer of the seal. Out of sight, out of mind. "Hey, don't go." When the old turtle saw Tong Yu leave, he couldn't help but be shocked. If even Di Jotian left, then the people outside would definitely rush in and tear him to pieces. Swoosh. The old tortoise opened its mouth and swallowed the Great Path Golden Lotus in one gulp. This guy. The people outside almost went crazy when they saw this. The old tortoise was very straightforward. He sat cross-legged in the void and activated his arcane art to refine the Great Path Golden Lotus. Preposterous. The people outside were going crazy. This guy was refining the Great Path Golden Lotus right in front of them, and they couldn't do anything about it. Fortunately, Di Jotian had no intention of leaving. In fact, Di Jotian was really afraid that Old Tortoise would be killed by those people outside. After all, Old Tortoise and his master were brothers who had been through life and death together. If Old Tortoise was killed in his territory, would Ji Fei let it go? He actually wants me to protect this old ruffian. Sigh. Di Jotian shook his head helplessly. Ji Ling left the Chaos Immortal Mansion world. She was wearing Ji Fei's sky blue immortal golden battle robe, which was an eternal grade Dao treasure. As long as it wasn't a supreme existence in the eternal realm, no one could hurt her. Where should I go to undergo the tribulation? Ji Ling walked out of the Chaos Immortal Mansion world and pondered where to go to undergo the tribulation. Greetings, little master. At that moment, 3 figures rushed over from afar and knelt in front of Ji Ling. "It's you guys." Ji Ling immediately had an idea when she saw the newcomers. "Get up," Ji Ling said. "Yes, little master." The newcomers stood up. They were Star Beast Sovereign, Shooting Sun Supreme, and Black Wind Supreme. The 3 of them had been bored to death out there. Not long ago, They had battled some old-timers from another world, and had even killed one of them. To the ancestral realm, Jiyu Ling said. Yes. The Star Beast Venerable immediately took out a formation platform. The moment the formation platform flew out of the Beast Venerable's hand, it rapidly expanded. Soon, the formation platform floated in the void like a huge mountain. The entire formation platform exuded an ancient and vicissitude aura. It was a super formation platform that could teleport across realms. Little Master, please. Star Beast Sovereign didn't dare to be negligent. He knew that his master was about to succeed and would once again rule the ancestral realm. When that time came, no one would be his opponent. Jiyu Ling and the others boarded the formation platform and activated it. In the next moment, countless Tao patterns surged out of the formation platform. A ball of divine light instantly enveloped the entire formation platform. Then, the ball of divine light soared into the sky, broke through the void, and disappeared in an instant. Those guys are finally gone. After Jiyu Ling and the others left, powerful figures appeared in the surroundings one after another. In this age of prosperity, the heaven realm, the human realm, and the ancestral realm could freely travel between the grand beginning realm and the heaven realm. Of course, this was only possible if one could afford the price to cross realms. One had to know that the energy required to activate the Transrealm Super Array platform was extremely strong, and it consumed a large amount of spiritual energy. Jiyu Ling went to the ancestral realm, while Yang went to the grand beginning realm. At this time, a white-robed woman sat cross-legged on a mountain peak in the ancestral origin mountain range. In front of her was a large cauldron, and a divine sword was stabbed into the ground next to it. It looked like an ordinary long sword. Rumble, high up in the sky, the great Tao rumbled. Endless tribulation clouds gathered above the mountain peak. Soon, the day turned into night. Dazzling bolts of lightning suddenly appeared in the tribulation clouds. A terrifying aura of destruction spread in all directions. At this moment, powerful consciousnesses rushed out from all over the primal beginning realm and swept towards the ancestral Yuan mountain range. However, when their consciousnesses approached the peak of the ancestral Yuan mountain range, their consciousnesses were destroyed. Roar. Some old antiques let out terrifying roars. Some old antiques' glabella split open and blood seeped out. What's going on? There's actually a force enveloping that area. Even our consciousnesses were blocked. Someone exclaimed. It's time. Come. Chapter 46-23. With Yang talent, it would have been very difficult for her to take the step to the extreme Tao. However, after so many years, she had experienced many things, especially the time when she and Jiyu Fei became mortals and lived their entire lives as mortals. This experience had given her an epiphany and allowed her to break through the shackles of cultivation, laying a solid foundation for taking this step today. A mortal's lifespan was only a few decades. In the eyes of immortals and gods, it was nothing more than a snap of the fingers. However, a moment of brilliance could last forever. In the decades that Yang had been immortal, she had experienced birth, old age, sickness, and death. She had even given birth to a daughter, Jiyu Ling. It could be said that she had experienced everything that mortals had to go through. The secular world refines one's heart. Comprehension is comprehension. For Yang to be able to achieve what she had today, those short decades of experience were absolutely indispensable. At this time, the heavenly tribulation had already taken shape. Endless tribulation clouds enveloped the entire ancestral Yuan mountains of the primordial world. Countless living beings were terrified by the heavenly tribulation. Roar. A terrifying roar came from the ancestral Yuan mountains. A silver wolf rushed out from the depths of the mountains, its terrifying aura at the extreme Tao level spreading in all directions. Little girl, you dare undergo the heavenly tribulation in the ancestral Yuan mountains? You're courting death. The extreme Tao level sky wolf swiped its claws at Yang on the mountaintop, tearing through the void. The wolf's goal was simple, to kill Yang. The heavenly tribulation would naturally dissipate once it lost its target. Yang didn't even look at the wolf. She only looked up at the heavenly tribulation in the sky. Endless tribulation clouds rolled, and one after another, destructive lightning bolts appeared. She could feel a destructive power that could threaten her life condensing and growing rapidly. Just as the gigantic wolf claws were about to smash down on the mountain, the ordinary-looking sword stuck in the ground next to Yang seemed to light up. Then, there was no then. The gigantic wolf claws dissipated in the void. Even the extreme Tao heavenly wolf was suddenly split in half. The mountainous corpse fell from the sky and smashed into several mountains below. The blood that flowed out from the corpse instantly turned the surrounding area into a sea of blood. This was the blood of an extreme Tao creature, and it contained extreme Tao-level vital energy. It wasn't something that just anyone could endure. Countless living beings that came into contact with the extreme Tao's blood instantly turned into a bloody mist. Even the flowers and trees crumbled into dust, completely disappearing. What's going on? Overflowing bloody light illuminated the heavens, and the great Tao was lamenting. A rain of blood actually fell from the sky, and the heavens and the earth grieved together. The wolf in the Zhu Yuan mountain range has fallen? How is that possible? I heard the wolf's voice just now. Many powerful figures came from outside the ancestral Essence Mountains. They were all alarmed by the appearance of the extreme path heavenly tribulation and had no choice but to come and investigate. At this time, a monstrous blood wolf rushed out from the mountain, devouring everything in its path. Countless wild beasts escaped from the ancestral Yuan Mountains, but most of them were directly devoured by the blood wolves behind them. Is the guy who killed Sirius crazy? Don't you know the consequences of letting the extreme Tao blood scatter in the world? Some of the older Supreme Venerables were very displeased. If you still have the time to squabble here, you might as well get rid of these blood of the extreme Tao. Someone mocked. The blood of the extreme Tao was useless to the pride of the extreme Tao. Even refining the blood of the extreme Tao would increase one's cultivation, but it was very useful to living beings below the extreme Tao. The extreme Tao source extracted from the blood of the extreme Tao could be used to refine heaven-defying divine pills of the extreme Tao. The older Supreme Venerables sneered and was about to collect the blood of the extreme Tao that gushed out from the mountain. However, at this time, the endless blood of the extreme Tao that swept out from the mountain actually flowed back. Soon, the blood of the extreme Tao within 1,000,000 miles quickly disappeared, and an endless stream of it gathered towards the mountain peak where Yang was. There was a huge cauldron on the mountain peak. Endless blood of the extreme Tao gathered from all directions and was devoured by the huge cauldron. Yang was Pill Cauldron Gate's passion, so she naturally wouldn't waste this kind of extreme Tao alchemy material. Soon, all the blood of the extreme Tao Skywolf was absorbed into Yang myriad medicine cauldron. Yang myriad medicine cauldron could not contain the blood of the extreme Tao, but with Jiu Fei's 9 heavenly stars sword suppressing the blood of the extreme Tao, the myriad medicine cauldron could contain it. The Supreme Venerables outside were extremely depressed when they saw this scene. However, they didn't dare to attack Yang. One must know that the extreme Tao Skywolf that attacked just now had fallen in the mountain, and that was an existence of the extreme Tao. Existences that could cultivate to the extreme Tao realm had lived for countless years, and they were extremely shrewd. They didn't want to die without knowing why. Rumble, an incomparably shocking thunder rumbled in the sky, and the destructive aura multiplied. The heavenly tribulation was about to begin. The people outside the mountain who were watching the show quickly retreated. This was the heavenly tribulation of the extreme Tao. Even true Supreme Venerables wouldn't be willing to be affected by this level of heavenly tribulation. One must know that being affected by the heavenly tribulation would be very dangerous. Although the people outside the mountain were all Supreme Venerables, it didn't mean that they had nothing to fear. Come on. Yang sat cross-legged on the ancient cauldron. She was going to undergo the heavenly tribulation with her cauldron, and the myriad medicine universe cauldron was also going to upgrade. Boom. As if responding to Yang, a huge lightning bolt directly bombarded Yang from the heavenly tribulation clouds. In just a flash, the mountain below Yang was directly turned into dust, directly wiped off the ground by the lightning bolt. The heavenly tribulation directly bombarded Yang, but she was unharmed. This was just the most ordinary heavenly tribulation. If she couldn't even withstand the most ordinary heavenly tribulation, Yang wouldn't have triggered the heavenly tribulation of the extreme Tao. Soon, the endless light of the heavenly tribulation completely drowned Yang and the huge cauldron. The extreme Tao heavenly tribulation finally began. An ordinary-looking long sword floated in the void nearby. No matter how the heavenly tribulation raged, it couldn't damage the long sword at all. Just as Yang was undergoing the heavenly tribulation, Ji Yufei's eternal martial constitution finally reached the phenomenal success stage. His blood, muscles, bones, and even his hair had been completely renewed. He directly sealed his cultivation, because once he revealed his eternal aura, the heavenly tribulation would descend. It's time to go out and meet those friends. Ji Yufei stood up, took a step, and directly disappeared from the place where he cultivated in seclusion. The next moment, he directly appeared in the first layer of the ninth heaven seal. He immediately saw the old tortoise sitting cross-legged at the side, refining the great path golden lotus with all his might. It's Ji Yufei. Chapter 46-24. Ji Yufei's ferocious reputation was well known. The moment he appeared, more than half of the hundreds of quasi-sovereigns guarding the first layer of the seal immediately ran away. It should be known that among the hundreds of quasi-supremes guarding the old turtle outside the first seal, many of them were from the primordial world and the ancestral world. They wanted to fish in troubled waters. In the past, Ji Yufei had slaughtered everyone in the primogenitor realm. Who knew how many supreme supremacies had died in his hands? Even supremacies weren't his match. In the end, Ji Yufei killed the first demon ancestor in the ancestral world. The primogenitor, the first devil, was a true eternal level devil, and yet, Yang Qi had forced him to sacrifice his life to open the cycle of reincarnation, forcing him into it. That battle alarmed all living beings in the ancestral world. After that battle, countless living beings in the ancestral world remembered a person's name. That person's name was Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei's battle completely changed the situation in the ancestral world. The ancestral demons began to decline, and other forces began to rise. Without the first demon ancestor, the ancestral demons were almost killed by the other forces. They had no choice but to retreat into the ancestral demon domain, not daring to come out. However, the quasi-supremes from the eternal world had never heard of Ji Yufei. The ignorant had no fear. These people naturally did not fear Ji Yufei. Greetings, Master. At this time, when Di Jotian saw Ji Yufei suddenly appear in the first seal, he immediately came over to greet him. Greetings, Master. Tong Yu also hurriedly appeared in the first seal and then knelt in front of Ji Yufei. When the quasi-supremes outside the seal saw this scene, their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Who was this person? Two half-step eternal existences actually knelt in front of this person. That was a half-step eternal realm existence. Master! Master! After hearing Tong Yu and Di Jotian's words, the quasi-sovereigns outside the first layer of the seal were shocked to the extreme. Watch him for me. Ji Yufei glanced at Old Tortoise before disappearing into the void. No one could see how Ji Yufei left. Yes, Master. Yes, Master. Tong Yu and Di Jotian hurriedly received the order. This way, those people outside the seal would have no chance at all, unless they could invite an eternal exalt over. However, an eternal exalt wasn't that easy to invite. Those who could become eternal paragons were all supreme existences of their sects. They would stay in their sects, and wouldn't move out easily. At this time, there was news that someone had obtained a great Tao golden lotus in a dangerous place in the primal chaos immortal world. As a result, the people outside the first layer of the seal couldn't sit still anymore. They left one after another. They wanted to charge into the danger zone and fight for that minuscule sliver of opportunity. One must know that that was a danger zone, not some sort of paradise. One would have to pay a price to barge into a danger zone, and that price would usually be one's life. Since someone had succeeded, they might as well give it a try. It was too unrealistic to stop Old Tortoise here. After all, there were two half-step eternal exalts guarding the place. In an instant, the quasi-supremes above the 9 heavens had all left. At this time, Ji Yufei's figure appeared outside the primal chaos immortal world. He pondered for a moment, then took a step forward and disappeared into the void once again. Soon, his figure appeared outside the ancestral origin mountains of the primal beginning world. He looked up and saw that in the sky above the ancestral origin mountains, endless lightning had engulfed Yang, and terrifying destructive power filled the world. One after another, tribulation lightning exploded around Yang. It was 5-colored tribulation lightning, the 5 elements tribulation lightning. She actually attracted the 5 elements thunder tribulation. Even Jiyu Fei was a little surprised. The 5 elements thunder tribulation was one of the strongest thunder tribulations, but Yang current state seemed to be quite good. What level of heavenly tribulation is this? Jiyu Fei pondered for a moment, then stretched out his right hand. A supreme immediately flew towards him involuntarily, and was grabbed by the neck. Without hesitation, he directly read this guy's memory. Although this guy was an extreme supreme, in Jiyu Fei's eyes, he was just an ant. Scram! Jiyu Fei waved his hand, and the supreme flew away without a trace. Is this the 5th level of heavenly tribulation? Jiyu Fei was a little surprised. There were 9 levels of extreme path heavenly tribulation. If Yang wanted to become a true supreme, she naturally had to go through the baptism of heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the surrounding extreme grade supremes who were watching Yang tribulation were scared out of their wits by Jiyu Fei. He could easily capture a supremacy and casually throw an extreme grade supremacy out of sight. Such a cultivation was simply terrifying. Rumble, endless 5-colored tribulation lightning raged. Yang was already sitting cross-legged in the void, and an ancient cauldron floated above her head. This ancient cauldron also began to emit the aura of the extreme path. However, the nearby 9 heavenly stars sword did not move at all. When Jiyu Fei appeared, the eternal divine sword immediately vibrated and flew towards Jiyu Fei. Jiyu Fei reached out with his right hand and directly grabbed the eternal divine sword. Old friend, Jiyu Fei touched the body of the sword, feeling the spiritual waves coming from the eternal divine sword. He could not help but feel a little emotional. This sword had accompanied him for almost his entire life, and it had also witnessed all of his growth. Continue to guard here. As he spoke, Jiyu Fei threw the sword out. The divine sword was somewhat unwilling, but Jiyu Fei did not care that much. He disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already back in the mortal realm. With a thought, Jiyu Fei's spiritual will instantly enveloped the entire world. Be it his enemies or friends, he could instantly sense where they were. Jiyu Fei suddenly pointed to the west, and a beam of divine light directly traversed the endless void and pierced through a mountain. The next moment, the entire mountain exploded, and a powerful existence rushed out while screaming. However, it only took an instant for that existence to turn into ashes. The remnants of the primordial era have hidden themselves very well. Jiyu Fei consecutively destroyed several of the remnants of the primordial era in the mortal realm. After doing all this, Jiyu Fei waved his hand, and a figure appeared in front of him. This person was Li Lingfeng, the former eldest disciple of the Taishan sect, Li Lingfeng. With Jiyu Fei's current level of cultivation, he could easily use his great mystiques to capture people in every corner of this world and bring them to him. Junior brother? Li Lingfeng was extremely excited as soon as he saw Jiyu Fei. Senior brother? Jiyu Fei nodded, then immediately took out a great path golden lotus and inserted it into Li Lingfeng's body. Junior brother, what is this? Li Lingfeng was startled. This is a heaven-defying opportunity. You must cultivate well. You have the heavy responsibility of reviving the sect. Chapter 46-25. Li Lingfeng was the eldest disciple of the Taishan sect. Back then, when the Taishan sect was destroyed, only a limited number of people managed to escape. Jiyu Fei was supposed to repay this debt with blood. However, the Dongfang family was still around. If Jiang Renhuang had not intervened, Jiyu Fei and the Dongfang family would not have stopped fighting. Of course, the main culprit had already been killed by Jiyu Fei. He was not a bloodthirsty person, so he did not have to destroy the Dongfang family. Back then, Dong Huang had also made great contributions to the entire human race. At that moment, under the influence of Ji Yufei's eternal power, the golden lotus of the Great Path in Li Lingfeng's body gradually melted. Li Lingfeng's physical body was undergoing a shocking change. His flesh and bones were melting, and in the end, he turned into a pool of blood. Countless patterns of the way appeared and intertwined in the pool of blood, and a speck of soul light flickered in the blood. At that moment, Li Lingfeng also knew what Ji Yufei was going to do. However, to Li Lingfeng's disbelief, although his entire body had turned into a pool of blood, he did not feel any pain at all. At that moment, he actually felt very comfortable and relaxed, as if his entire spirit was soaking in warm water. At that moment, he felt that his great path was constantly being replenished by an unknown power. All the bottlenecks he had encountered in the past were being broken through one by one. His great path was transforming towards the perfect realm. The perfect great path was the extreme great path. Could it be that his junior's level of cultivation had reached the level where he could directly break through to the extreme great path? It was no wonder that Li Lingfeng would think that way. After all, he could clearly feel that his great path was transforming towards the perfect realm. However, in reality, Li Lingfeng was thinking too much. It was impossible for anyone else to raise a prospective supreme being to the extreme great path. If he wanted to reach the extreme great path, he could only rely on himself. The golden lotus of the great path could only greatly increase Li Lingfeng's chances of breaking through to the extreme great path. Very soon, the pool of blood gradually turned into a human shape. His flesh and bones were being reconstructed, and his meridians shone densely like lightning in the blood light. Reconstruct the physical body, Ji Yufei bellowed, and endless blood-colored light converged towards the figure like a tidal wave. Li Lingfeng then appeared in the sky once again. Roar! Li Lingfeng threw his head back and let out a long roar. At this moment, he was filled with power. It was as if he could punch a hole in the sky with a single punch. Peak quasi-supremacy, haha, Li Lingfeng laughed out loud. An hour ago, his cultivation was still at the early stage of the quasi-supremacy stage. Unexpectedly, in just an hour, his cultivation had risen to the peak of the quasi-supremacy stage. This was simply too unbelievable. Junior brother, you, Li Lingfeng was so excited that he was almost speechless. Ji Yufei was actually able to make someone into a quasi-supremacy? If that was really the case, wouldn't it be easy to revive the Taishan sect if he asked his junior brother to make hundreds of quasi-supreme beings? Impossible, Ji Yufei shook his head. What? Junior brother, you know what I'm going to say? Li Lingfeng was shocked. It's impossible to create a quasi-supreme being. It's still possible to create a sage. However, forcefully increasing one's cultivation would be a huge problem. It would be impossible for one to advance even an inch in their entire lifetime. Ji Yufei said. This, Li Lingfeng was stunned when he heard this. It was a big problem for one's cultivation to advance even an inch in their lifetime. In this world where sages were as many as dogs and great sages were everywhere, sages were really nothing. It should be known that the divine sons and saintesses of the eternal world were all quasi-supremacy stage fellows. Even if Ji Yufei's cultivation recovered to the eternal realm, it was impossible to create a quasi-supremacy stage. It should be known that to take that step, one could only rely on himself. One's own Tao could only be created by oneself, and only after walking out of it, could Ji Yufei help him perfect his Tao. Therefore, in essence, if Li Lingfeng did not become a quasi-supreme being, it would be impossible for Ji Yufei to help him perfect his Tao. Junior brother, would you like to sit at my place? Li Lingfeng said. Okay. Ji Yufei nodded. The next moment, Ji Yufei waved his hand, and the two disappeared into the void in an instant. Li Lingfeng only felt his vision go black, and then it was bright again. He had returned to the eastern domain of the human realm, back to the mountain gate of the Taishan sect. This method, Li Lingfeng could not help but be shocked. His junior brother was amazing. Even if he was at the peak of quasi-supreme being, it was impossible for him to return to the mountain gate with just a teleportation. Taishan sect, Ji Yufei looked at the three big characters on the mountain gate and could not help but sigh. He remembered the scene when he was studying in the Taishan sect. At that time, He was a small figure who was regarded as a waste by his peers. Fortunately, he found a yin-yang jade pendant at the bottom of the icy azure pool, and his luck changed. His cultivation improved greatly, and he embarked on the path of the strong. Ji Yufei could not help but admire Li Lingfeng. Not only did he rebuild the Taishen sect, but he also ran the Taishen sect well. There were more than a dozen sages in the sect. Together with Li Lingfeng, a quasi-supreme being, the Taishen sect was not a small force. Of course, compared to the Zhao family of the primordial clan and the Dongfang family, the current Taishen sect was still not enough. However, those superforces did not dare to attack the Taishen sect easily. It should be known that Li Lingfeng was Ji Yufei's eldest senior brother. The Zhao family of the primordial clan had finally resolved their hatred with Ji Yufei, so how could they dare to offend Ji Yufei? And because of the Eastern Sky Tyrant Emperor, the Dongfang family did not dare to do anything to Li Lingfeng. The Eastern Sky Tyrant Emperor had issued a death order. Whoever dared to offend Ji Yufei would be expelled from the Dongfang family. Moreover, Ji Yufei also had power in the Eastern Domain. In Wanxiang City, there was the Ironblood Daoist and Zhuge Liang. Demons also appeared in the Eastern Domain. Junior brother, please. Li Lingfeng led the way and directly invited Ji Yufei into the Taishen hall of the Taishen sect. Master, the dozen or so experts in the hall hurriedly bowed to Li Lingfeng. Then, Li Lingfeng sat down on the throne in the middle of the hall. Junior brother, please sit. Li Lingfeng said to Ji Yufei. Yes. Ji Yufei sat in the lower seat. Who are you? That seat is not for you. Get up. As soon as Ji Yufei sat down, a white-haired old man shouted at him. Ji Yufei glanced at the man and smiled. This guy was only at the early stage of the sage realm. In front of him, he was just an ant. That's right. This is Boss Lu's seat. Young man, you should get lost. Someone said impatiently. Get lost. Boss Lu is here. Someone said anxiously. Ha ha. Is the master back? At this moment, a loud laugh came from outside the hall. Then, the door darkened, and a man strode in. Boss Lu was here. Chapter 46-26. The current Supreme Mystery Sect was no longer the Supreme Mystery Sect of the past. In the entire Supreme Mystery Sect, there was only one Supreme Mystery Sect disciple from the past, and that person was Li Lingfeng. Rebuilding the Supreme Profound Sect was Li Lingfeng's lifelong wish, and now, his long-cherished wish had been fulfilled. The Taishen sect had been rebuilt, and he, Li Lingfeng, was about to break through to the extreme law realm. At that time, the Taishen sect, with an extreme law sovereign at its helm, would be even more powerful. In the Supreme Mystery Sect, apart from Li Lingfeng, who was at the peak of the quasi-supreme realm, there was another guy who was about to break through to the quasi-supreme realm. That person was the number 2 figure of the Taishen sect, Lu Wei, Boss Lu. Boss Lu was at the peak of the holy venerable level. In the Taishen sect, his prestige was second only to Li Lingfeng. All the saint-level elders obeyed him. Sometimes, even Li Lingfeng had to give him some leeway. Lu Wei was very domineering. As soon as he arrived, he cupped his hands towards Li Lingfeng, who was sitting on the throne in the middle of the hall, as a form of greeting. In the Taishen sect, only he dared to be so arrogant in front of Li Lingfeng, the clan leader. Vice sect leader Li Lingfeng was just about to introduce Ji Yufei to Lu Wei, but when Lu Wei came in, he already saw Ji Yufei sitting in his seat. Brat, who are you? Hurry up and scram, Lu Wei shouted at Ji Yufei. A middle-aged saint with white hair laughed coldly and said, That's right. Doesn't that kid know whose seat he's sitting on? Is it a seat he can just sit on? In the entire Supreme Mystery Sect, only Boss Lu is qualified to sit in this position. The group of saint-level experts looked at Ji Yufei with scorn and disdain. In their opinion, this black-clothed youth really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. The moment he arrived, he took Boss Lu's seat. If he angered Boss Lu, the consequences would be dire. Vice sect leader Lu. On the other hand, Li Lingfeng's expression turned somewhat ugly. This Lu Wei was simply too presumptuous. He actually dared to interrupt him. Sect Master, Only now did Lu Wei notice that Li Lingfeng's tone was a little different from usual. "This is my junior brother, don't be rude," Li Lingfeng said in a deep voice. "Junior brother? Sect leader's junior brother?" The dozen or so saint-level experts in the hall were all shocked. But this junior brother of the sect master didn't seem to have much of a cultivation base. He wasn't even a saint. In this world, even saints were ants. The sect master's junior brother was not even a saint, yet he dared to sit on Boss Lu's seat. He was simply trying to stir up trouble. Could it be that the sect master actually wants his junior brother, who is not even a saint, to be the deputy sect master of our Taishen sect? If that was the case, everyone in the sect would not accept it. The Supreme Mystery Sect did not belong to Li Lingfeng alone. "Sect master, although he is your junior brother, please ask him to scram." Lu Wei did not give in at all. Cultivation and battle prowess were the way to go. A guy who wasn't even a sage, even if he was the sect master's junior brother, he was still an ant. Ji Yufei did not reveal his cultivation level. Instead, he suppressed his cultivation level to below that of a saint. He watched the scene with interest and did not say anything. In the face of these people's mockery and ridicule, Ji Yufei was still calm and collected. "Hurry up and scram, boy. Do you want Boss Lu to ask you to scram? Little guy, be tactful." The saints in the main hall mocked. "Outrageous. Do you know who he is?" Li Lingfeng really could not take it anymore. "Who could he be?" Boss Lu said disdainfully. "Yeah, who is this person? Could he be a supreme being? Haha, this is really funny. If he is a supreme being, then I am a supreme being. Haha." The saints in the hall roared with laughter. "How dare you?" Li Lingfeng roared. "Sect master." The saints in the main hall could not help but be shocked when they saw Li Lingfeng's anger. They all looked at Li Lingfeng on the throne in a panic. "Sect master, please calm down. Even though this little fellow is your junior brother, this world is all about strength. He's not even a saint, he's just an ant. Don't tell me you're going to ruin the harmony because of an ant." Boss Lu said disapprovingly. "You're talking to me about strength." Li Lingfeng shook his head helplessly. If these people knew who his junior brother was, would they still dare to be so presumptuous? "This is the truth," Boss Lu said indifferently. "He is Ji Yufei." Li Lingfeng said coldly. "Ji Yufei, that Ji Yufei. What, he is Ji Yufei?" The saints who came to their senses looked at the black-robed young man who sat calmly on the throne as if they were looking at a monster. Plop. Almost all the saints in the main hall knelt directly. "Senior Ji, Master Ji, Ancestor Ji, we didn't know it was you." One of the saints could not even speak properly. Everyone was terrified to the extreme, afraid that Ji Yufei would kill them in a fit of anger. One must know that Ji Yufei was a peerless villain, and the cultivation world was full of legends about him. He had flattened the land of extinction, destroyed the immortal orthodoxy, killed a supreme, and defeated all the experts in the world. All of these were enough to make everyone look up to him. They should have thought of this long ago. Everyone in the main hall was filled with regret. It was not that they did not know that the clan master had an impressive junior brother, but when they saw that Ji Yufei's cultivation was below the sage level, they had already thought that he was just another junior brother of the clan master. One must know that Ji Yufei was a peerless villain. Why would he appear here? However, no one would have thought that Ji Yufei was a young man in black. You are Ji Yufei?" Boss Lu's expression changed drastically, and his voice began to tremble. "That's right," Ji Yufei said calmly. This, gritting his teeth, eldest brother Lu also knelt down in front of Ji Yufei. "Just now, you were talking big, talking about strength and ants. How impressive," Ji Yufei said. "Senior Ji, please spare me." Cold sweat broke out on Boss Lu's forehead. "Ah, I should be the one asking you to spare me. I am just an ant. You are a saint. You can kill me with one finger." Ji Yufei shook his head. This, Boss Lu's face turned green. He lay on the ground trembling in extreme fear. The others almost peed their pants. "Eldest senior brother, your Taishen sect is too lenient," Ji Yufei said. "Ah, junior brother, I am cultivating and building a sect at the same time. My ability is limited. Why don't you help me? Li Lingfeng took the opportunity to express his thoughts. If they had Ji Yufei's help, the Taishen sect would definitely rise in a short time. You should work hard on your own. Ji Yufei smiled. You bastards, don't embarrass me here. Get out of here, Li Lingfeng shouted at the guys lying on the ground. Yes, yes, yes. Chapter 46-27. I've made a fool of myself. Li Lingfeng was a little embarrassed. His subordinates were too presumptuous and had embarrassed him too much. Ji Yufei waved his hand and said, Eldest senior brother, nothing can be accomplished without rules. Rewards and punishments must be clear. This is the only way to revitalize the Taishen sect. You're right, junior brother. Li Lingfeng nodded. He was really too lenient with Boss Lu and the others. He was so lenient to the extent that they were arrogant. It seemed that they needed to be reorganized. Well, eldest senior brother, then I'll take my leave. Ji Yufei did not want to interfere in the affairs of the Taishen sect. Junior brother, are you leaving just like that? Li Lingfeng was taken aback. He very much hoped that Ji Yufei would stay and help him, but he also knew that this was unrealistic. The current junior brother was not the junior brother of the past. He could not see the depth of Ji Yufei, but he knew that Ji Yufei was now at least an extreme supreme existence. Yes, it's been too long since I've walked around. It's time to see those old friends. Ji Yufei was a little emotional. Time was merciless. There were probably not many of those people who could live to this day. When he had just made his debut, he had competed with the talents of the southern wasteland. He did not know how Azure Dragon, Gui Teng, Feng Shiwu, Zhu Qia, and the others were now. Time was merciless. Some people were destined to be annihilated in the years, but some people were courageous, cutting their way forward. With Ji Yufei's current cultivation, as long as that person's life imprint had not completely dissipated, he could resurrect them. Junior brother, you. Li Lingfeng wanted to say something more. But Ji Yufei had already disappeared. If there's anything, you can crush this talisman. Ji Yufei's voice came, and then, a talisman floated down from the void. This. Li Lingfeng caught the talisman, feeling a little complicated. The news of Ji Yufei's arrival at the Taishen sect quickly spread, and the entire Eastern cultivation world was shocked. The head of the Zhao family of the primordial antiquity came directly to the Taishen sect and asked to see Ji Yufei. The master of the Dongfang family had also arrived. The two superpowers of the eastern domain of the human world did not dare to be negligent. This was especially true for the Dongfang family. They were afraid that Ji Yufei would come to seek revenge, so they could only express their goodwill to Ji Yufei first. Their attitude was very humble. The leaders of the other small powers in the eastern domain flocked over, wanting to pay their respects to Ji Yufei. In an instant, the supreme profound sect was bustling with noise and excitement. However, no one could have imagined that Ji Yufei had already left the supreme mystery sect and was now in Wanxiang City. Greetings, Master. In the main hall of Wanxiang City's City Lord residence, Ji Yufei sat on the throne in the middle and was receiving the greetings of the Iron Blood Daoist and the others. They were all incomparably excited that Ji Yufei could return. One must know that the outside world was filled with Ji Yufei's legends. Recently, no one dared to cause trouble in Wanxiang City. In the past, the demons would come to harass them from time to time and even attack Wanxiang City. But now, even demons rarely appeared in the entire eastern region. Rise. Ji Yufei waved his hand and said, Yes, Master. The Iron Blood Daoist and the others hurriedly stood up. Master, you're back this time, the Iron Blood Daoist said carefully. The feeling that Ji Yufei gave him was still unfathomable. You guys can do whatever you need to do. I'm just taking a walk in this human world and looking around. That's all, Ji Yufei said indifferently. The experts in the main hall could not help but feel a little confused. What was going on? Master only came back to take a look. What the hell was going on? This was very different from what the Iron Blood Daoist had imagined. They were still looking forward to Ji Yufei leading them out of Wanxiang City and conquering the entire human world. But now, It seemed that Master had no intention of dominating the human world. What's going on? The Iron-Blood Daoist and the others were baffled. They never imagined that Jiu Fei was no longer the Jiu Fei of the past. His eyes were no longer on the human world, but the eternal world. That was his stage. Demons. With just a thought, Jiu Fei's divine sense instantly enveloped the entire eastern region of the human world. Be it the ancestral land of the primordial Zhao family or the ancestral land of the eastern world, they were all under his perception. These two places were shrouded in layers of formations with countless interweaving runes. Powerful auras had nowhere to hide under Jiu Fei's perception. And in a seemingly desolate place in the eastern region, there was actually a mysterious entrance. Are they all hiding in the small world? Jiu Fei smiled. In the next moment, under the shocked gazes of the Iron-Blood Daoist and the others, he disappeared into the void. Master, the Iron-Blood Daoist and the others did not know what to do after Jiu Fei left. In the next moment, Jiu Fei appeared outside the hidden entrance of the small world. Human race. Die. A sneer came from the side. Then, the void shattered and a figure walked out from the void, slapping at Jiu Fei. A violent demonic power burst out, causing the void to tremble. Jiu Fei was a little surprised. This guy was actually a demon lord. A demon lord guarding the entrance. It seemed that this small world was quite something. Bam! The demon lord's palm was blocked by an invisible force when it was 1 foot away from Jiu Fei. Who are you? The demon lord was shocked and quickly retreated. You don't have the right to know. Jiu Fei said indifferently. Go to hell. The demon lord roared and endless demonic light burst out. It was a blood-colored demonic light that corroded everything. Even the void was annihilated. Instantly, the blood-colored demonic light covered Jiu Fei. The entire place turned into a sea of blood. The sky was lit up by the blood-colored light, dyeing half the sky red. However, no matter how terrifying the blood-colored demonic light was, it couldn't get close to Jiu Fei's body. It couldn't even touch the corner of his robes. No matter how the demonic light surged, it couldn't get close to Jiu Fei's body. You! The demon lord was shocked to the core. At this moment, Jiu Fei snapped his fingers. In the next moment, the endless blood-colored light dissipated. The demon lord exploded into a blood mist as well. Both his body and soul were destroyed. Jiu Fei took a step forward and passed through the entrance of the small world, entering it. Demon. The moment Jiu Fei entered, he could sense an extremely strong demonic aura. This time, he returned to the human realm to see his old friends and walk around. However, it was also to solve the demonic threat in the human realm. Especially in the East region, there was the Taishan sect and Wanxiang city. He was prepared to let his disciples and grand disciples train in the human realm. I see. Jiu Fei discovered the secret of this place very quickly. There was a source of power of the demon lord hidden here. It was because of this source of power of the demons that this place became a demonic world. Chapter 46-28. When the news of Jiu Fei's appearance in the Eastern Domain spread, the Eastern Domain of the human realm and even the entire cultivation world of the human realm were shaken. Countless experts rushed to the Eastern Domain, wanting to see Jiu Fei. The current Jiu Fei had unparalleled prestige in the mortal world. He had flattened the land of despair, annihilated the devil's den, and opened up the path to the mortal world. This kind of merit and virtue could be said to be unprecedented. When Jiu Fei reappeared in the human realm, countless people were extremely excited and wanted to come to the Eastern Domain for a pilgrimage. For a time, the entire Eastern Domain became the most eye-catching region in the entire human realm. At this time, Jiu Fei killed his way into a small world of demons in the Eastern Domain with his own strength. As soon as he appeared, the experts of the demons in the small world of demons immediately attacked Jiu Fei. In the sky and on the ground, there were powerful demonic shadows everywhere. Courting death. Jiu Fei smiled indifferently. He just snapped his fingers, and then, there was nothing else. Countless experts of the demons who rushed towards him were instantly turned into a mist of blood. The blue sky was dyed with demonic blood, and the whole world was filled with a strong smell of blood. Jiyu Fei's right hand made a grabbing motion in the void, and endless demonic yuan qi frantically gathered towards his right hand. He then grabbed it with his hand. A blood-colored demonic core immediately appeared in his hand. The essence of countless experts of the demons was refined into a demonic core in an instant. Everything was so simple. The demonic qi contained in the demonic core was enough to create a demonic quasi-supreme. With Jiyu Fei's current cultivation, he no longer needed to deliberately refine the spiritual energy of the world to replenish his body. Because he was the sky, he was the earth, he was the ruler. With a thought, he could devour the entire heaven and earth, and with a thought, he could destroy a large world. At this moment, there were only some weak demons and some weak magical beasts left in the small world of demons. Jiyu Fei didn't attack again. He turned and left. All the demons in the immortal god realm and above were dead. The remaining ones were just ants that weren't even in the immortal god realm. After this battle, it would be impossible for the demons in this small world of demons to recover without a few thousand years. All the demons in the demons' pocket world were dumbfounded. At this moment, Jiyu Fei exited the small world. With a single step, he left the soaring dragon ancestral star and arrived in the depths of the starry sky. The heavenly Tao is flawed. No wonder no one has been able to reach the extreme Tao since the great desolate world. Jiyu Fei sensed the pulse of heaven and earth around him. Soon, he knew where the problem was. Mending the heavenly Tao was not an easy task. Of course, with Jiyu Fei's current cultivation base, it wasn't difficult for him to mend the heavenly Tao. Jiyu Fei sat cross-legged in the depths of the starry sky and then released his divine will. In just an instant, his divine will enveloped the entire human realm. He could sense that there were two huge cracks in this world. Countless fragments of the Great Path were constantly reforming around these cracks and constantly collapsing. The human realm's heavenly Tao couldn't mend the two cracks. Bystanders couldn't detect the two cracks in this world at all. Only extreme-grade supreme beings could barely sense them. However, Jiyu Fei was an eternal supremacy now. The two cracks in this world were no secret to him. Only extreme Taos possess a flawless great Tao. Jiyu Fei mumbled to himself. Yeah, I'll drag those guys out and sacrifice them to the heavens. After saying that, Jiyu Fei stood up. In the next moment, he locked onto the entrance of a small world. It was in the northern region of the soaring dragon ancestral star, the extreme north demon region. In the past, the extreme north demon region was incomparably powerful. The Six Paths Demon Palace ruled over 10 regions. The Six Paths Demon Monarch had even killed his way into the Supreme Mystery Sect. But now, the peerless and ruthless person who had suppressed the extreme north demon region had already left. The demon cave was still swallowing demonic qi. All the demons had disappeared, but the roars of demonic beasts could still be heard from the depths of the earth. The sky of the extreme north demon region was still dark. The 7 demon cities seemed to exist eternally. They still stood tall in the land of the extreme north. At this moment, Jiyu Fei appeared outside the ruined demon cave. The entire human realm had countless small worlds. These small worlds couldn't hide from Jiyu Fei's eternal level divine will. The human realm wasn't as simple as it seemed. Boom! With a single punch, Jiyu Fei broke through the void and pierced through this small world. Rumble! A demon hand suddenly appeared in the void and grabbed at Jiyu Fei. The power of a quasi-supreme? Jiyu Fei frowned. In this human realm, with the existence of heaven's punishment, even an extreme supremacy wouldn't dare to use the power of the extreme path. Quasi-supremacy was the most powerful existence in the human realm. He waved his hand impatiently, and the demon hand that was grabbing at him shattered in the void. In the next moment, Jiyu Fei took a step and entered this small world. After Jiyu Fei entered this small world, he found that this small world was no different from the outside world. There wasn't a trace of demonic qi. There were countless creatures in this small world. There were countless cities scattered on the ground, and there didn't seem to be any particularly powerful demons in the cities. What's going on? Jiyu Fei was a little surprised. Wasn't this small world the lair of the demons? The style wasn't right. How was he going to play? He originally wanted to capture an extreme Dao supremacy, devil Dao supremacy, but now it seemed that it was impossible. He couldn't even sense the quasi-supreme demons who attacked just now. How could this be? Could it be? He thought of a possibility and couldn't help but be shocked. Swoosh. At this moment, a demonic light suddenly shot at him. In the next moment, this demonic light pierced through his eternal martial body and flew out from his back. This is all an illusion. Ji Fei suddenly roared at the sky, and a terrifying sound wave spread in all directions. The entire void was undulating like waves. The scene in front of him changed quickly, and the whole world suddenly changed. The sky was dark, and there was demonic chi lingering in the void. Something was floating in the middle of this small world. The original beautiful scene disappeared. The thing floating in the middle of this small world was like a blood-colored demonic eye, and that thing was sweeping towards Ji Fei. At this time, Ji Fei's injuries had already healed. It can actually injure me? Ji Fei couldn't help being surprised. Even Ji Fei didn't expect to encounter an eternal magic tool here, and it was an awakened eternal magic tool. Chapter 46-29. The extreme northern demon region was the origin of the demon Dao on the soaring dragon ancestral star. This was the world of demons, and the demon Dao reigned supreme. However, no one would have thought that there was a small world in the extreme northern demon region, and there was an eternal magic tool in this small world. An eternal magic tool. Even in the ancestral realm, there weren't many of them. However, this was not the ancestral realm, but the human world. There was actually an eternal magic tool in the human world. This was something that Ji Fei had never thought of. Boom. At this time, the eternal magic tool in the pocket world displayed its might. Boundless blood-colored light burst out of the demonic eye, and within that blood-colored light, countless demonic shadows appeared and attacked Ji Fei. This was a demon Dao divine ability. This eternal magic tool was not sleeping, it was the tool spirit that attacked. Rumble. The entire small world was shaking. In fact, with the power of this eternal magic tool, it could destroy this world with a single thought. However, it was obvious that this eternal magic tool did not want to destroy this world. Ji Fei did not want to destroy this small world. He clenched his right hand and directly punched towards the endless bloodlight. In the next moment, the countless demonic shadows in the bloodlight instantly collapsed in the void, and the monstrous bloodlight also disappeared. It looked like an ordinary punch, but its power was surprisingly great. Little guy, who are you? A spiritual fluctuation came out of the eternal magic tool. You are the demon source here? Ji Fei looked at the demonic eye and said indifferently, Little guy, this lord is asking you. The demonic eye said coldly, TSK, you dare to call yourself lord in front of me? Ji Fei said disapprovingly, Go to hell. The demonic eye suddenly disappeared, and a demonic shadow appeared in the void. In the next moment, this demonic shadow attacked Ji Fei. A demonic hand directly grabbed at Ji Fei. Just a small eternal magic tool, do you think you can overturn the heavens? Ji Fei still punched out. Boom. Ji Fei's fist collided with the demonic hand in an instant. In the next moment, a circle of spatial ripples, visible to the naked eye, spread out with the two figures as the center. Several mountains in the vicinity were directly crushed into dust. This pocket world was very desolate. However, there were also some demons and demons. Only, the cultivation bases of these demons were not very high. A single strand of Ji Fei's aura spread out and all the demons and demons in the pocket world instantly exploded. This was his world, and he was the supreme ruler here. Everything here belonged to him. Even the life and death of these monsters and demons was up to him. Well, since I can't find a demon of the extreme Dao, I'll use you to make up for the heavenly Dao of the human realm. Ji Fei pondered for a moment and said, Little guy, what did you say? The devil image looked at Ji Fei as if he was looking at a monster. I said I'll use you as a sacrifice to the heavens. Ji Fei said disapprovingly. Haha, use me as a sacrifice to the heavens? What heavens and earth can withstand that? The devil image laughed. He was an eternal demonic weapon, an existence that surpassed the heavenly Tao. No heavenly Tao could withstand the power of his great Tao. At least not the heavenly Tao of the human realm. If I say you can, then you can. Ji Yufei stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, I say you're going to die. The devil image instantly disappeared into the void. In the next moment, he suddenly appeared behind Ji Yufei and threw a punch at Ji Yufei. However, the devil image was dumbfounded the next moment. He saw that his fist had actually penetrated Ji Yufei's body. It was as if his fist had hit the air. Bam! With a wave of Ji Yufei's hand, the spectre was sent flying away. You're just a demonic weapon. Ji Yufei took a step forward and directly caught up with the flying devil image. He then stepped on it from the air. Roar! The devil image roared as boundless demonic Tao energy erupted. Numerous blood-colored demonic spears rushed out of the devil image's body and pierced through the void. However, the demonic spears that were aimed at Ji Yufei were all repelled by his protective god light. Behave yourself, Ji Yufei said as he exerted force with his right foot. A powerful eternal force surged out from his foot and instantly shackled the devil image. What are you trying to do? The devil image panicked. Are you stupid or deaf? I already said that I'm going to sacrifice you to the heavens. Ji Yufei said impatiently. Don't. Boss, old ancestor, please don't. At this moment, the devil image was completely terrified. He never expected that this human was an eternal realm existence. Of course, if he hadn't been seriously injured in the battle back then, this human might not have been able to do anything to him. Too late. Without hesitation, Ji Yufei struck the devil image back to its original form. It was a demonic weapon in the shape of an eye. It was very peculiar. Could this be a demonic weapon refined from the real eternal demon eye? Ji Yufei was also shocked. The power of the eternal demon eye was a little different from what he had imagined. However, he finally knew the reason. There was a crack on the eternal demon eye. Without hesitation, Ji Yufei took the eternal demon eye and left the small world. He didn't destroy the small world. He believed that after a long time, living creatures would appear in the small world again. These living creatures might be demons. Where did the real great demons go? Ji Yufei was really curious. He could cover the entire soaring dragon ancestral star with a single thought. The strongest existences in the extreme North Demon region were only two quasi-supreme level demon path powerhouses. Through Ji Yufei's senses, the auras of the two quasi-supreme level demon path powerhouses were as eye-catching as lamps in the dark. The location of the 5 ancestral stars, Ji Yufei left the soaring dragon ancestral star and went deep into the starry sky. At this moment, his divine will covered more than half of the human realm, including the 5 ancestral stars. He discovered that the 5 ancestral stars' locations were very strange in the starry sky. Good heavens! Could it be that there was someone who wanted to repair the heavenly path in the past? Ji Yufei was extremely shocked. The 5 ancestral stars were clearly part of a super formation. To be precise, the 5 ancestral stars were the 5 formation cores of this super formation. Ji Yufei could clearly sense that the spiritual energy of the entire universe was gradually gathering toward the 5 ancestral stars. No wonder the 5 ancestral stars could give birth to so many living creatures. Someone had set up a super grand formation in the mortal realm to nourish the 5 ancestral planets with a heaven-defying method. Tianfa? Ji Yufei thought of the existence of Tianfa. How extravagant! Ji Yufei exclaimed in surprise. However, the energy required to activate this super array was not a small amount, and the eternal demon eye in his hands could provide an endless amount of energy for the super array. Let's give it a try. Chapter 4630. Countless years ago, someone set up a heavenly formation in the human realm. The so-called heavenly formation used the heaven and earth as a formation. Someone wanted to mend the heavens and make the heavenly Tao of the human realm perfect, but he failed. Because if that person succeeded, the heavenly Tao of the human realm would be perfect. However, the heavenly Tao of the human realm was still incomplete, which was why an extreme sovereign could not be born. Once Ji Yufei succeeded in mending the heavens and restored the heavenly Tao, the entire human realm would change. The entire heaven and earth would be different, and the human realm might be able to reproduce the golden age of the untainted world. At this time, Ji Yufei sat in the depths of the starry sky. His position was very special. It was the center of the 5 ancestral stars of the human realm. He wanted to activate the heavenly formation by himself. Boom! Ji Yufei, who was sitting cross-legged in the starry sky, suddenly unleashed an extremely powerful spirit wave. The spirit wave instantly enveloped the entire human realm. This was the divine sense of an extreme sovereign. Even the divine sense of an extreme sovereign could not cover the entire human realm. Only the supreme existences in the eternal realm could do so. At this very moment, the quasi-sovereigns on the ancestral planets of the 5 major life forms in the human world all sensed a terrifying divine will that made their souls tremble. In the ancestral land of the Jiang clan on the soaring dragon ancestral star, a figure that looked like a statue that had been sitting on a boulder since the beginning of time suddenly opened his eyes. A little familiar, could it be that little friend? Jiang Renhuang murmured to himself. Meanwhile, in other regions, the powerhouses who had sealed their cultivation bases were also alarmed. That guy is back. In the ghost realm of Fengdu, in a huge city that floated under the dusky sky, a figure sitting on an emperor's throne suddenly stood up. It's time to go for a walk. Ghost Emperor of Fengdu said. In the next moment, he disappeared from the ghost city of Fengdu. In the endless chaos, a middle-aged man that looked like a mummy suddenly opened his eyes. The heavenly formation has been activated, the middle-aged man murmured to himself. In the next moment, he broke through the chaos, took a step forward, and directly appeared in the human realm. Then, he took another step and appeared in the depths of the starry sky, in the starfield where Ji Yufei was. It's you. When the middle-aged man saw Ji Yufei, he was very surprised. Dao Father. Ji Yufei also sensed the middle-aged man's presence. The me in this life is no longer that name. The middle-aged man, who was wrapped in a bag of skin and resembled a mummy, spoke. You lived a second life. Ji Yufei exclaimed in shock. Extreme Dao's sovereigns were immortal existences, but this was relative. Extreme Dao's sovereigns could also be injured and killed by others. Someone actually killed the Wushang Dao ancestor once. How could this be possible? That was an unmatched Dao ancestor, an existence at the extreme Dao level. His power was unimaginable to bystanders. You could say that. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment and said, Fellow Daoist, your current name is? Ji Yufei asked. Qin Emperor, the middle-aged man said. What? When Ji Yufei heard this, he was shocked. The second reincarnation of the supreme Dao ancestor was actually Emperor Qin? Qin Emperor of the Qin clan? How could this be possible? What you saw back then was just an incarnation of mine. The middle-aged Qin Emperor said. This, Ji Yufei was dumbfounded. The second reincarnation of the supreme Dao ancestor was actually Emperor Qin. The Qin clan was an extremely ancient clan that had once produced a great emperor. Should I call you Emperor Qin or Wushang Dao ancestor? Ji Yufei felt like he was going crazy. A name is just a code. You can call me whatever you like. The middle-aged man shrugged and said. He didn't care at all. Then I'll call you Dao ancestor. Ji Yufei said after thinking for a while. Up to you. Do you want to mend the sky? The Dao ancestor said. That's right. Ji Yufei said calmly. At this moment, the heavenly formation began to operate. A pressure that made all living beings tremble descended upon the world. Seeing this, the Dao ancestor stopped talking and sat cross-legged in the void. Soon, lines of formation runes appeared around Ji Yufei and interweaved into a formation platform. The formation runes were connected to the 5 ancestral stars. In the next moment, 5 light pillars shot out from the 5 ancestral stars. The 5 light pillars shot into the sky and fixed the crack in the heavens. It was the power of the 5 elements. The soaring dragon ancestral star had the power of the earth, the Kunlun ancestral star had the power of the metal, the Buzhou ancestral star had the power of the water, the Ziwei ancestral star had the power of the wood, and the primal ancestral star had the power of the fire. The power of the 5 elements of the entire human realm was gathered in the 5 ancestral stars. Soon, the 5 light pillars began to weaken. The power of the 5 elements that the 5 ancestral stars had gathered for countless years could not even last a quarter of an hour. Gu Fei didn't hesitate and immediately took out the eternal demon eye. Boom! The power of the eternal demon eye exploded and was firmly controlled by Gu Fei. After Gu Fei refined it, it turned into the power of the 5 elements and surged toward the 5 ancestral stars. In the next moment, the 5 ancestral stars seemed to be on fire, bursting with the divine light of 5 elements that had never been seen before. At the same time, Gu Fei disintegrated the eternal great Tao of the eternal demon eye. Countless Tao runes rushed into the sky and entered the crack in the heavens. The crack that was fixed in place by the power of the 5 elements began to shrink. Ha ha! The Tao ancestor couldn't help but laugh at this scene. A tear fell from the corner of his eye. He was happy that the human realm's heavenly Tao was recovering and was thinking of a perfect transformation. He had waited for this moment for far too long. They were sinners when the primordial world was destroyed. Those who survived did everything they could to repair the damaged heavenly Tao. Some even sacrificed their lives for it. However, since the destruction of the primordial world, those supreme experts who survived all wanted to repair the heavenly Tao. They even joined forces to set up the heavenly formation, but they still failed. Those who survived all reached the end of their lives one by one. Only he and a few others succeeded in living a second life. The supreme Tao ancestor and the others finally came to a conclusion. It was impossible for the supreme experts to repair the crack in the heavenly Tao. It was too difficult to repair the crack. Of course, there were supreme experts who willingly sacrificed themselves to the heavenly Tao. However, although the crack in the heavenly Tao became smaller, it was not completely repaired. This time, there must be a miracle. Soon, powerful figures appeared near Gu Fei. These people didn't dare to get too close to Gu Fei and only watched from afar. Jiang Runhuang's figure also appeared nearby. The speed of Gu Fei's growth was too fast. He had long surpassed Jiang Renhuang and all the experts in the human realm. Apart from the fact that he had yet to cross his tribulation, he was a genuine eternal realm expert. Today, I will mend the sky. Gu Fei's voice echoed across the world. Countless cultivators on the 5 ancestral planets could hear his voice. Someone is mending the sky. How is that possible? Chapter 46:31. Today, I'll mend the sky. Gu Fei's voice reverberated throughout the entire mortal world. Countless living beings on the 5 ancestral planets were shocked and terrified to the extreme. Some super antiques that had disappeared for countless years jumped out. Near the star field where Gu Fei was located, one incomparably powerful figure after another appeared. They didn't dare approach Gu Fei because the place where Gu Fei was located was filled with countless interweaving Tao patterns. Those were incomparably ancient and powerful Tao patterns. Every single one of those Tao patterns could easily kill a quasi-supremacy or even a supremacy. This kind of power shouldn't have appeared in the mortal world. One had to know that heavenly punishment existed in the mortal world, but it couldn't be used against Gu Fei. In the entire mortal world, not even Tao ancestors dared to ignore heavenly punishment. Even the ancient Tao ancestors had to seal their cultivation. But there was one exception, Gu Fei. Heavenly punishment couldn't find Gu Fei because the heavenly punishment in the mortal world and even the heavenly world were perfected by Gu Fei. The heavenly punishment was branded with Gu Fei's imprint. Between the mortal world and the heavenly world, there was only one person who could ignore the existence of heavenly punishment. That person was Gu Fei. So it's this malefic star that's mending the sky. I didn't expect him to be this strong. So many geniuses from the primordial era couldn't do it, but he can do it. The old antiques whispered in the distance. Since the Tao ancestor could live to this day, it wasn't necessarily impossible for others to do the same. Some of these super antiques had achieved the Tao before the primordial era collapsed. They had lived for countless years and survived the darkest era of the mortal world. Too many people had died in the primordial era. Some of the primordial era's powerhouses had died, but there were also quite a few who survived. From the looks of it, this little guy is going to succeed. An old voice said. What kind of devil artifact is that? The aura it emits is too shocking. The super old-timers stared in shock at the devil eye of eternity that Ji Fei was refining. The eternal demon eye shook violently, wanting to fly away, but Ji Fei used his eternal level power to suppress it, constantly refining the demonic power within it. After being refined and filtered by Ji Fei, the inexhaustible power of Fiend Dao was continuously supplying energy to this heavenly formation in the human world. The divine light that erupted from the ancestral stars of the 5 great life forms illuminated the entire star region where they were located. At this moment, all the living beings in the mortal dimension felt that the entire world was undergoing an indescribable change. Especially those living beings with high cultivations, they felt that this change was inconceivable. The entire world's spiritual essence was recovering. This was especially the case for the half-supreme beings. They sensed a type of restriction, a type of suppression, an even more powerful suppression from the heavenly Tao. The void of the world began to become more stable. All of this was just the beginning. As Ji Fei continued to break down the eternal great Tao of the demon eye of eternal, more and more cracks appeared on the demon eye of eternal. Ji Fei was sacrificing his own Tao to mend the heavens. What he was transforming wasn't his own Tao, but the eternal demon eye's Tao. Repairing the heavenly Tao of a complete great world wasn't an easy task. Ji Fei's previous thoughts were too simple, thinking that he could just find a demon of the extreme Tao to sacrifice. In fact, when Ji Fei activated the heavenly formation in the human world, he knew that things wouldn't be as simple as he had imagined. Not to mention a demon of the extreme Tao, even if he sacrificed dozens of them to the heavenly Tao, they still wouldn't be able to mend the crack in the heavenly Tao. Fortunately, he had accidentally obtained this eternal level demonic artifact. Although it was heavily damaged, it was still an eternal level artifact. It was also because of this that Ji Fei was able to complete this magnificent feat of mending the heavens. Seeing that the crack in the heavenly Tao in the sky was gradually shrinking, Ji Fei also became nervous. If he succeeded in mending the heavens, his contribution to the human world would surpass that of anyone else. This was truly a matter of boundless virtue. No one knew what would happen if the heavens were successfully mended. However, one thing was certain. If the heavens were successfully mended, it would be a great thing for the entire human world. Swoosh! At that moment, the void shattered and a demonic arrow was shot directly at Ji Fei. The power that erupted from the demonic arrow was earth-shattering, and even the power of the heavenly punishment was suppressed. Eternal demon! Ji Fei, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, stretched out his right hand and slapped the demonic arrow. That's, the supreme Tao ancestor, who was sitting cross-legged on a nearby star, opened his eyes the moment the demonic arrow appeared. How dare you! The supreme Tao ancestor was enraged. At the most critical moment of Ji Fei's mending of the heavens, a demon actually attacked Ji Fei. This completely angered the supreme Tao ancestor. Everyone who saw this scene was also stunned. The demonic energy that erupted from the demonic arrow made their souls tremble. Even a supremacy at the peak of the extreme grade might not be able to withstand this arrow. However, an even more shocking scene happened. The demonic arrow that was shot at Ji Fei actually collapsed under his right palm. The demonic energy contained in the demonic arrow, which was enough to kill a supremacy at the peak of the extreme grade, was actually caught by Ji Fei and directly refined into nourishment for the heavenly formation. At that moment, the supreme Tao ancestor directly shattered the void and charged in the direction of the demonic arrow. He was extremely powerful. The anger of the supreme Tao ancestor is incredible, someone exclaimed. The supreme Tao ancestor was a supreme existence who was invincible for an era. No one knew what level his cultivation realm had reached. Even Ji Fei couldn't see through the supreme Tao ancestor. The supreme Tao ancestor had lived a second life, and perhaps his cultivation had also reached the eternal grade. Rumble! The void that had yet to be repaired by the power of heaven and earth made a shocking sound. A terrifying and monstrous aura came from another world. It was extremely terrifying. But soon, the broken void was repaired by the power of heaven and earth, and the two terrifying auras naturally disappeared. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. One had to know that if a battle of that level broke out in the human realm, the entire human realm would probably suffer a catastrophe. And just when everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the void outside the heavens collapsed again, and a demonic shadow directly rushed out of the broken void. Kill. Without any words or hesitation, the demonic shadow directly charged at Gu Fei, trying to stop him from mending the heavens. Do you demons think there's no one in the human realm? Chapter 46-32. In the human world, Gu Fei opened the heavenly array and refined the eternal demon eye to mend the sky. This was a huge amount of merit. However, at the most critical juncture, there were terrifying great demons that broke through the void to stop Gu Fei from mending the heavens. However, the human world was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Unexpectedly, a peerless expert took action and blocked the great demons. Rumble, the old man who rushed out of the ancient battlefield in the depths of the starry sky, created a world and directly hit the great demon. The world disappeared in an instant. The old man didn't want to fight the great demon in the human world. He wanted to fight the great demon outside the human world. Where did these great demons come from? There are definitely no great demons of this level in the human world. The human world's experts who were watching the battle from the nearby starfield were all stunned by this scene. Are they great demons from outside the human world? Someone said in surprise. These great demons' cultivation seems to be above the extreme grade. An old man who had sealed his extreme grade cultivation seemed to have noticed something, and his face turned ugly. The legendary realm? The other old men were also shocked to the extreme. When the great wilderness world collapsed, there was a madman who wanted to take that step. He actually wanted to take the great wilderness world's heavenly Tao. In the end, after a great battle, the great wilderness world was destroyed. Yet now, two terrifying demons who were suspected to be above the extreme grade had jumped out. How could this not be shocking and frightening? Only Gu Fei knew that these two great demons were not real eternal great demons. They were just half-step eternal realm existences. They wanted to stop him from mending the sky with this kind of cultivation. They were simply courting death. However, he couldn't be distracted at this time. He had to refine the eternal demon eye with all his strength. Otherwise, the two great demons would have died countless times. As Gu Fei continued to refine it, the cracks on the eternal demon eye increased. It was about to collapse. At this time, the crack in the great Tao in the morning sky was almost invisible. Little fellow, stop. Right at this moment, an aged voice resounded. After that, the entire sky collapsed as a boundlessly enormous devil shadow actually shattered the sky and entered the mortal dimension. The entire human realm began to tremble as if it would collapse at any moment. Eternal devil. When Gu Fei saw this great demon, his pupils involuntarily shrank. The human realm can't accommodate an eternal level great devil. A moment later, with a thought from Gu Fei, the star domain where the menacing eternal demon was located collapsed. The eternal devil didn't even have time to think before he was swallowed up by the huge hole that suddenly appeared in the void. At the same time, a pitch-black will appeared above Gu Fei's head. It was the primogenitor realm's supreme Tao artifact, the Wheel of Worlds. When Gu Fei recovered his eternal cultivation, he could finally use the Myriad Worlds Wheel. He had used the Wheel of Heavens and Myriad Worlds to send the eternal devil into another world. However, Gu Fei knew that this still wouldn't be able to stop the eternal devil from returning. An eternal realm lifeform was too strong. If the eternal devil wanted to return, no one would be able to stop it. It was only a matter of time before the eternal devil returned to the human realm. Gu Fei wanted to repair the heavenly Tao before the eternal devil returned to the human realm. Looks like I can't hold back anymore. Sitting in the starry sky, Gu Fei suddenly made up his mind. In the next moment, endless eternal God light bloomed from his forehead. He used his eternal source. Boom. Under the bombardment of Gu Fei's eternal essence, the demon eye of eternity instantly shattered and a clump of eternal essence of the demonic Tao appeared between the heaven and earth. Gu Fei didn't hesitate. Using a great magic skill, he split out a part of his eternal source and fused it with the eternal source of the demon eye of worlds. The fused eternal source was not Gu Fei's source, nor was it the source of the demon eye of eternity. It was a brand new source of eternity, and it was extremely powerful. Gu Fei sent the fused eternal source into the heavenly array. In the next moment, the entire heavenly array appeared between heaven and earth. Endless worldly spiritual energy gathered madly as the heavenly array, along with the fused eternal source, shot up into the sky and entered the heavenly Tao. Wang. After fusing with the heavenly array and the eternal source, the heavenly Tao underwent an astonishing transformation. At that moment, the sound of the grand Tao filled the entire world. The spiritual energy in the human realm increased rapidly and the void became incomparably stable. The heavenly Tao of the human realm was many times stronger than before. This was the eternal heavenly Tao. This meant that the heavenly Tao of the human realm was not only repaired, but also had the chance to transform into another eternal world. Of course, this process would be extremely long. At this time, even if the eternal demon returned to the human realm, he wouldn't be able to do anything to this world. There is no need for the heavenly punishment to exist anymore. After saying that, Gu Fei waved his hand and the power of the heavenly punishment that enveloped the entire human realm disappeared, as though it had never existed. The heavenly punishment disappeared. The group of old fogies from the human realm who had been watching Gu Fei mend the heavens in the distance became extremely excited. Due to the existence of the heavenly punishment, they had no choice but to hide like turtles. But now, they no longer had to live in such a cowardly manner. Boom! A supreme Daoist body shot out from the depths of the starry sky. Very soon, in the ancestral land of the Jiang family in the human realm, a supreme empress power rushed out. Jiang Renhuang had unsealed himself. On this day, supreme Daoist body erupted from all over the human realm. The supreme Daoist bodies who had sealed themselves had been waiting for this day for far too long. On this day, the human realm displayed power that was far stronger than the other worlds. Although it couldn't compare to the ancestral realm, it had the potential to surpass the ancestral realm. Rumble, it was at this time that cracks appeared in the sky again. A demonic figure broke through the void and appeared in the human realm. "I'll go kill you." After saying that, Gu Fei slapped the demonic figure back. Then, he rushed into the foreign world. He wanted to fight this demon in this desolate world. He wanted to take the initiative. "Kid, you've got guts." The eternal demon stared at Gu Fei and sneered. "If you want to fight, then let's fight." Gu Fei was starting to get impatient. He had just split the eternal origin source and had injured his Yuan Qi. "If you want to die, I have no reason not to fulfill your wish." Chapter 46-33. Gu Fei and the eternal demon were facing off. The aura of the two eternal level powerhouses completely erupted, and the entire world directly collapsed and turned into a primal chaos. Fortunately, there were no living creatures in this desolate world. This world simply couldn't withstand the pressure that erupted from the two eternal level powerhouses. The world instantly crumbled, the heavenly Tao turned into nothingness, and the world returned to chaos. Kill! Kill! Gu Fei and the eternal demon attacked at almost the same time. Heaven transformation palm. He directly used the transforming heaven hand. With a palm strike, the power of transforming heaven erupted. Even the primal chaos was melted away. Everything that was enveloped by the power of transforming heaven turned into nothingness in an instant. Eternal demonic will. The eternal demon roared. His forehead suddenly split open, and a demonic eye appeared. In the next moment, a blood-colored demonic light rushed out from the demonic eye, piercing towards Gu Fei. Swish! The moment the blood-colored demonic light collided with Gu Fei's heaven transformation palm, it was directly melted away by the heaven transformation palm and disappeared into the void. In the next moment, even the eternal demon himself was enveloped by Gu Fei's heaven transformation palm. In an instant, the eternal demon felt a small part of the eternal demon power in his body being melted away, which shocked him to the extreme. Roar! The eternal demon roared, and directly rushed out of the void that was enveloped by Gu Fei's heaven transformation palm. Infinite incarnation, the eternal demon roared, and in the next moment, countless demonic figures appeared in the sky. These demonic figures blotted out the sky and filled every inch of the void. This was simply an army of demonic cultivators. Melt for me. Gu Fei used the Heaven Transformation Palm with all his strength, and the power of Heaven Transformation Palm was unprecedentedly strong, instantly enveloping a part of the world. One by one, the demonic shadows dissipated in the void. They were forcefully turned into nothingness by Gu Fei's Heaven Transformation power. This, the Eternal Fiend was shocked. Kill. He immediately used his Dao artifact. It was a saber, a terrifying demonic saber. With the devil saber in hand, the eternal demon's battle prowess soared. Swoosh. Without any hesitation, the eternal demon slashed out at Gu Fei. The blood-colored blade light broke through Gu Fei's Heaven Transformation domain. The blood-colored demonic light quickly dimmed under the wear and tear of the Heaven Transformation power. However, the eternal demon had already used all of his strength for this attack. Even the void of primal chaos would be torn apart by this attack. This was an attack that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Gu Fei flipped his right hand and a huge cauldron appeared in his hand. Without any hesitation, Gu Fei took out the mountain river cauldron. Clang! When the eternal demon's blade landed on the mountain and river cauldron, sparks flew everywhere and the mountain and river cauldron was sent flying. Gu Fei waved his right hand, and the cauldron of mountains and rivers flew back to him, landing in his hand. When he looked down, he could not believe what he saw. There was a blade mark on the body of the mountain and river cauldron. This was the mountain and river cauldron, but there was a blade mark on it. This was simply too inconceivable. Kill. The eternal demon attacked once again. He slashed at Gu Fei again. Wherever the blood-colored saber light passed, everything would be destroyed. This was the terror of eternal level power. An eternal demon could destroy a part of the world with a wave of his hand. If they did not fight in the primal chaos, but in the human realm, Gu Fei and the eternal demon could destroy the human realm. Countless living beings would die. At this time, Gu Fei grabbed the mountain and river cauldron and smashed it towards the incoming blade light. Clang! The blood-colored blade light landed on the mountain and river cauldron. This time, Gu Fei was sent flying along with the cauldron. His hand that was holding the cauldron was shaken to the point of bleeding. So strong. Gu Fei had to admit that this demon was really powerful. After all, he had not transcended his tribulation. To a certain extent, he could not be considered a true supreme existence in the eternal realm. Extreme breaking fist. Without any hesitation, Gu Fei struck out with his ultimate killer move. As he punched out, his aura soared. Be it strength or speed, they instantly broke through Gu Fei's limits. Roar! Gu Fei roared to the sky, and a terrifying sound wave spread out, dispersing the surrounding primal chaos aura. Bam! Catcher! Gu Fei's punch directly smashed onto the blood-colored saber light. The blood-colored saber light instantly shattered, and his fist directly smashed onto his opponent's chest. What? The eternal demon was shocked. He wanted to dodge, but he could not. His body was punched through by Gu Fei's fist, leaving a bloody hole in his chest. The eternal devil was shocked to the extreme. This guy could actually injure him? How was this possible? His devil body had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times. Even a true eternal level supreme Dao treasure would find it difficult to injure him. Bam! Gu Fei's right hand shook, and a violent power exploded from his hand. The next moment, the eternal demon's body instantly shattered into a bloody mist. Wanting to kill an eternal level life form was definitely not an easy task. Go! Gu Fei directly grabbed the bloody mist in his hand, and then used the myriad world wheel to instantly disappear into the primal chaos. When he reappeared, he was already in the ancestral realm. The ancestral realm was a primal world that could give birth to eternal realm living beings. The laws of heaven and earth were extremely powerful. Even an extreme Dao Supreme could not destroy this part of the world. Because existences stronger than an extreme Dao Supreme could not truly destroy the ancestral realm. Where is the ancestral demon territory? Ji Fei directly released the Eternal Realm Spirit Force. Soon, he sensed the existence of the Eternal Demon Territory. With a thought, he instantly disappeared into the void. The next moment, when he reappeared, he was already standing outside the entrance of the Eternal Demon Territory. Boom! Suddenly, the ball of demon blood in Ji Fei's hand exploded as a blood figure appeared in the void. In the blink of an eye, the Eternal Demon had reconstructed its body and was completely restored to its original state. You go in. Ji Fei did not hesitate. He directly punched the Eternal Demon and directly smashed it into the Ancestral Demon Territory. The Ancestral Demon Territory suddenly became chaotic. He also took a step forward and directly entered the Ancestral Demon Territory. The moment Ji Fei entered the Ancestral Demon Territory, he directly triggered his Eternal Heaven Tribulation. Chapter 46-34. After Ji Fei's cultivation recovered to the Eternal Realm, the first time he returned to the Primogenitor's world, he caused a huge commotion. He didn't return to the Primogenitor's world alone. Instead, he entered the Primogenitor Demon Domain with an Eternal Realm Demon. He wanted to destroy the Primogenitor Demon Domain. The moment Ji Fei and the Eternal Great Demon entered the Primogenitor Demon Domain, the entire Primogenitor Demon Domain almost collapsed. The terrifying pressure spread in all directions. Countless demons couldn't bear this level of pressure and exploded. In just a few breaths, more than half of the demons in the Primogenitor Demon Domain died. Only the extreme-grade demons could barely hold on. It's Ji Fei, the extreme-grade Primogenitor Demon in the Primogenitor Demon Domain, was dumbfounded. No one expected that Ji Fei would suddenly attack. Moreover, the current Ji Fei was even more terrifying and powerful than before. Did he recover his eternal cultivation? Rumble! Suddenly, thunderous sounds came from the sky above the Primogenitor Demon Domain. Tribulation clouds appeared above the Primogenitor Demon Domain. The entire Demon Domain darkened as if night had suddenly fallen. All the creatures in the Primogenitor Demon Domain were terrified to the extreme. You're a madman. The Eternal Great Demon was really scared by Ji Fei. This guy actually triggered his Eternal Heavenly Tribulation. This was his Heavenly Tribulation, but this guy actually wanted to drag him to transcend the tribulation together with him. I'm not going to play with you anymore. The Eternal Great Demon was about to leave. Hehe, now you have no choice but to play with me. Ji Fei smiled. The next moment, the Eternal Great Demon found that the whole world seemed to be locked. Even with his cultivation, he couldn't tear the void of this world. At the same time, Ji Fei attacked again. Extreme Breaking Divine Fists. Without hesitation, Ji Fei directly used his self-created supreme battle skill. He just made a fist stance, and a violent and monstrous aura erupted from his body. Little guy, do you really think that this demon master is easy to bully? The Eternal Great Demon steeled his heart and also used his trump card of the Devil Path. Rumble! 9 balls of demonic light rushed out from the Eternal Great Demon's body, illuminating the world. Boom! As Ji Fei punched out, the void in front of his fist shattered. At the same time, the 9 balls of demonic light around the Eternal Demon's body went up to meet it. The two unimaginably powerful forces collided with each other in an instant, and the power fluctuations that erupted spread out in all directions. The Ancestor Demon Territory, which had already collapsed, finally collapsed in the void. At that moment, the Eternal Heavenly Tribulation had already locked down this region. It was impossible for Ji Fei and Eternal Devil to leave this place. 2 figures were moving quickly. Muffled sounds of collisions rang out. Even in other regions of the Primogenitor realm, this sound could be heard. Roar! The Eternal Devil roared in rage. His black hair that resembled demonic flames danced wildly in the wind. After that, his black hair grew to a length of 1,000 jong. Each strand of hair was like a demonic dragon, exuding a terrifying demonic flame that coiled around Ji Fei. Boom! Ji Fei punched out, and the eternal energy surged forward, directly shattering the thousands of jong-long devil hair and sending the Eternal Great Demon flying. You want to pull me through the tribulation together? You're underestimating me too much, true demon world. The eternal great demon roared in rage. He actually transformed into a world, pulling Jiu Fei into a true demon world. There was no heaven's tribulation here. The eternal great demon actually used such a method to isolate the heaven's tribulation. This was a world that the eternal great demon had opened up. 10 directions annihilation, only devils shall exist. With a roar, the devil chi around the eternal great demon surged out in an earth-shattering manner. 9 balls of demonic light exploded. In an instant, the terrifying heaven-burning devil flames covered every inch of the void in this demon territory. Rumble. The entire demon territory shook violently. It was pitch black inside. Everywhere one looked, one could only see the pitch-black devil flames that burned and distorted the void. Boom! Jiu Fei transformed into the Tai Chi Yin-Yang. A Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram suddenly rushed out of his body, fixed above his head, and enveloped a part of the world. The 2 black and white Tai Chi eyes constantly emitted mighty yin and yang chi. This yin and yang chi was the result of chaos giving birth to Tai Chi, and Tai Chi giving birth to yin and yang. The terrifying yin and yang chi completely repelled the surging devil flames. The mighty yin and yang chi from the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram froze the entire world. Rumbling sounds constantly came from the pitch-black demon territory. There was a vast amount of devil chi fluctuating there, as if it had turned into a piece of chaos. Bang! An extremely dull sound came from the void that was filled with terrifying demonic flames. As the sound rang out, the true demon world also shook violently. The eternal great demon's methods were truly terrifying. This was the true strength of an eternal great demon. It could even isolate Jiu Fei's eternal tribulation. At the edge of the true demon world, a pitch-black spatial crack appeared, as if there was an ancient giant knocking on that part of the world. Bang! There was another violent tremor. More spatial cracks appeared at the periphery of the true demon world. They were densely packed, like a spider web. It was as if an exquisite porcelain had been shattered. Jiu Fei was actually going to open the true demon world. Preposterous. The eternal great demon was shocked and angry. He had no choice but to use his full strength. Under the burning of the burning heaven demon fire, even the void of the perfect big world produced ripples. It was as if a part of the world had been shattered. The power of the true demon world that belonged to the eternal great demon began to surge out from the densely packed spatial cracks. Bang! Within the true demon world that was surging with devil flames, there was another huge tremor. Then, as if something had been shattered, the true demon world actually collapsed. Whoa! A hair-raising roar came from the gradually collapsing part of the world. Endless devil light burst out, and the whole world surged with monstrous flames. The flames were as black as ink, causing the whole sky to sink into darkness. Boom! The Taiji yin-yang diagram trembled again and again. Monstrous yin and yang chi surged out from the 2 Taiji eyes, pressing down like 100,000 mountains, protecting Jiu Fei as he rushed out of the endless devil flames. A part of the true demon world collapsed and turned into primal chaos. The monstrous devil flames were so dazzling. In the primal chaos, the devil flames churned and surged violently. Moreover, although the pitch-black devil flames emitted a black light, it was still dazzling and dazzling. It became more and more intense, almost making people unable to open their eyes. The mysterious and unfathomable Taiji yin-yang diagram displayed a great power, freezing the world around Jiu Fei. Rumble, the Taiji yin-yang diagram trembled again and again, releasing layers of yin and yang chi. The 2 black and white yin-yang eyes were like 2 bottomless abysses, crazily devouring the boundless devil flames that exploded. Roar! A devil roar came from the endless devil flames. Then, the surging devil flames condensed into a 10,000 jong tall devil shadow. The devil shadow's head reached the sky and his feet stepped on the ground. The 10,000 jong tall devil body emitted an extremely terrifying devil aura. He waved his fist that was as big as a mountain and punched towards the Taiji yin-yang diagram in the sky.